Chapter 191. Look at how big and round this cauldron is. Actually, King Zhen was not wrong. If they were to debate this subject, neither King Zhen nor Yang Shaojun could convince the other. Both parties were coming from a different standpoint, and there was no way to distinguish who was right or wrong. This was because right and wrong were just judgments imposed by others. But be it the matter of nuclear technology or nanorobotics, Ren Xiaosu felt that there was indeed no right or wrong regarding these two matters. However, what motives did those who wanted to use them have? While they were deadlocked, Ren Xiaosu suddenly raised his own doubts. I have a question. Are those nanomachines really that great? They weren't in the past. Luo Lan gave a simple explanation. They used to only be deployed for angioplasty through some basic programming, but it'd totally be different if they could directly interface with neurons in the brain and be put to military use. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. Different in what way? Just think about what if those tiny yet extremely tough nanomachines could become your new skeletal structure and muscles. What's more, after interfacing with your neurons, they'll fully be under your control like how you control your fingers. There wouldn't be a need to give them any specific instructions. Just use them like how you would use your hands, Luo Lan said. It still sounds rather normal to me, Ren Xiaosu said. Forget it, you won't understand. Luo Lan scorned, there's no way to communicate with an uneducated person. Ren Xiaosu grew unhappy. I scored 560 points on my final exams, so who are you calling uneducated? How much did you score on your exams? Luo Lan was embarrassed. Ha ha ha, why would you bring that up? Yang Shaojun calmly watched Ren Xiaosu and felt he was really thick-skinned. He could even deceive himself like that. At this moment, King Zhen laughed and said, no matter what, we're still brothers in arms today. Whatever happens in the future, let time be the judge. We don't have any use for the hard drive, so feel free to take it back with you. Yang Shaojun suddenly asked, the experimentals you people caught, are the results of the study you did on it out yet? Just what are those things? King Zhen thought for a moment before saying, you might not believe it even if we tell you. Those things are full of cancer cells. No, to be more precise, they're full of cancer cells that seem to have reached a state of equilibrium. It's common knowledge that cancer cells are a heterogeneous population, with giant nucleated, binucleated, and heteromorphic nucleated cells. However, the cancer cells found in the experimentals comprise only of a single binucleate, 1, population, and they're even uniformly divided as normal human cells are. I suspect the Pyro Company attempted to search for a way to live forever. There was once a woman who, after her death, had her cancer cells taken and cultured. Later, those cancer cells were used to propagate into tens of thousands of generations of cancer cells became known as the Hellas cell line, too. Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked, has that already been verified, or was it just your guess? Oh, King Zhen laughed and said, it was just my guess. After all, we haven't started our research on the experimentals for long, so don't take it too seriously. Ren Xiaosu thought, if you were only guessing, please don't sound so certain when you are relating it to us. Wait, Yang Shaojun suddenly also conjectured, they were selectively injecting drugs into humans, so does that mean they're selecting people with cancer cells? King Zhen said, but I think, since cancer cells are derived from a mutation in normal cells, if you're trying to define it, you can also say it's uncontrolled evolution. But in my opinion, such evolution will always be an inferior product. Today, Ren Xiaosu came into contact with various kinds of speculations, and some of these speculations were not even ideas he knew before. For a moment, Ren Xiaosu felt a little envious of these people for having received a complete education. It meant that these people were able to have a complete understanding of the previous world. Let's part ways here. King Zhen smiled and said, speaking of which, I'm still under house arrest. Aren't you worried about the threat that they pose to this world? Ren Xiaosu asked. King Zhen waved it off as he stepped into an armored vehicle. They're not enough to cause me any worry yet. It's only the kids who find them scary. Ren Xiaosu glanced at Yang Shaojun and thought that it was no wonder she wanted to shoot him with her rifle. What a pity it was to not shoot a show-off like him. However, his relationship with the King Consortium had suddenly turned from enemies into something much more ambiguous. At least when he encountered Luo Lan next time, they wouldn't have to immediately fight it out to decide a victor. Actually, there wasn't really a conflict between Ren Xiaosu and the King Consortium. He was just a typical supernatural being who wanted to survive in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. Ren Xiaosu watched as the armored vehicles drove off. He then summoned the shadow clone to carry him and Yang Xiaojun on its shoulders, before getting it to start running. The experimentals had only retreated because they were afraid of the armored vehicle's firepower. Now that they had driven off, Ren Xiaosu would have to quickly get them both out of here. "What plans do you have now?" Ren Xiaosu asked during the bumpy ride on the shadow clone's shoulder. "I'm going back to Stronghold 88, Yang Xiaojun said. "Stronghold 88, that sounds really far," Ren Xiaosu said with a sigh, as there was such a big difference between the strongholds' numbers. "It's not exactly that far," Yang Xiaojun said, "it's only 2 strongholds away." Then why is its number so distant?" Ren Xiaosu wondered. "It used to be called Stronghold 101, Yang Xiaojun explained, but the consortium thought it'd be luckier to call it Stronghold 88, so they changed it. The previous Stronghold 88 has been renamed to Stronghold 101. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for such a long time that he could not say anything. It could even be done that way. Wasn't that such a feudal form of superstition? "How about you, what plans do you have?" Yang Xiaojun asked. "I'll have to find Yan Luyuan and the others first. I told them to head north." At this time, the sky was just starting to turn bright. The two of them were being carried on the left and right shoulders of the shadow clone and chatting without a care as it ran into the distance. The eerie stronghold city behind them that had been destroyed got further and further away from their sights. If anyone came here in the future, they would probably not expect this place to have a glorious past. Meanwhile, Zhu Xianchu was trekking in the wilderness. As he was already very far away from any King Consortium-controlled territory, he was no longer worried they could do anything to him anymore. When he passed by the Zong Consortium's town yesterday, he even used the money Ren Xiaosu had given to him to purchase quite a few supplies. As a matter of fact, the King Consortium's banknotes were really quite useful out here. Other than having to pay some administrative fees, there was no need to worry about it not being accepted. In this era, people who often traveled between strongholds would always have to bring along different corporation-issued currencies, which made it very inconvenient. The further northwest Zhu Xianchu traveled, the more desolate the scenery became. Sometimes when a gust of wind blew, yellow dust and sand would get swirled up into the air. All of a sudden, Zhu Xianchu stopped in his tracks. He was surprised to see a group of people on motorcycles speeding towards him. Sensing danger, Zhu Xianchu immediately summoned his shadow clone. The refugees at the Zong Consortium's town had cautioned him beforehand to be careful of bandits when he headed further north. But in the instant he summoned his shadow clone out, he froze. For some reason, a large black cauldron floated in front of him before his shadow clone came out. The incoming group of people started indiscriminately shooting at Zhu Xianchu from afar. But the bullets did not even leave any marks on the black cauldron as they hit it. Zhu Xianchu was very happy. Could his superpower have evolved to become even better? As for these bandits, would a supernatural being need to be afraid of them? Zhu Xianchu grinned. He would have to test out his new power on someone. Chapter 192 I'm giving you an out. News of Stronghold 109 getting destroyed and taken over by the experimentals had quickly spread to the rest of human civilization under the alliance of strongholds. If Stronghold 112 and 113 were destroyed by acts of nature, there was nothing that humans could do about it. But for Stronghold 109's destruction, the shadow of a non-human species challenging the survival of mankind hung over the incident. That was because Stronghold 109 was not destroyed by an act of nature. This threat came from a new species that also happened to be extremely aggressive. The strongholds had been standing in this world for hundreds of years now, while some of the most powerful empires in the history of human civilization only lasted 200 years at most. Therefore, humans had almost become accustomed to the safe lives they knew in the strongholds. But now, the appearance of the experimentals was telling humanity they had to re-examine this world. The road from Stronghold 109 to Stronghold 111 was mainly flat. The armored vehicles had already left, leaving only 2 off-road vehicles speeding their way through the vast wilderness. Behind the off-road vehicles, a large cloud of dust was left in their wake. This was a grand sight to behold from afar. King Zhen sat in the back of the vehicle with his eyes closed and seemed to be thinking of something. Next to him, Luo Lan kept eating. Every now and then, he would say a few words to King Zhen. Are we really just going back to Stronghold 111 without putting up a fight? Luo Lan said indignantly. Does the board really intend to kill the donkey the moment it leaves the millstone? We have done so much for the King Consortium, yet they're placing us under house arrest just like that. King Zhen opened his eyes and looked at Luo Lan. You can call yourself a donkey if you want, but don't drag me in. Oh, I used the wrong idiom, Luo Lan corrected himself. But you get what I mean anyway. The King Consortium is our home. If we don't go back there, where do we go? King Zhen said, sounding bored, since you're going back with me this time, it's going to be safer for you. By placing you in someone else's stronghold, who knows what kind of trouble you'll cause again. I didn't cause trouble for nothing though. Luo Lan was unhappy. Didn't I successfully get my hands on the Li Consortium's research results? But who knew you'd go and give it away just like that? Speaking of which, why'd you give it to that little girl from the Yang Consortium? Even if our nanorobotics tech hasn't had any breakthroughs yet, what if we do get a breakthrough later on? Just think, we're both normal humans, but we can become superhuman with this nanorobotics tech. King Zhen didn't care to explain. I don't like all that fighting and killing. But all you've been doing is fighting and killing. Luo Lan said, isn't that what everyone thinks you're best at? I'm best at growing flowers. King Zhen said in seriousness, I'm warning you. Don't you dare touch the flowers I grew when we get back. Sure, Luo Lan curled his lips. Why would I touch your flowers when I can touch women instead? But anyway, I still find it such a waste that we gave that hard drive away to the Yang Consortium. King Zhen laughed and said, it's not a waste. One of the Li Consortium's strongholds has been destroyed and their research results were even stolen. To resolve their internal conflicts, they'll be sure to pin the blame on an external party. The Yang Consortium will be that target. With our two neighbors fighting, we can rest easy. As if they would start fighting so easily. There hasn't been a real war in such a long time, Luo Lan said. King Zhen looked out of the window and said calmly, that's where the problem is. There hasn't been a war in such a long time among mankind. If we human beings don't start a war, can we still be called greedy humans? Look at you, putting down humanity like that. Well, I dislike wars, but that's just how life works. Luo Lan said, but now that the saboteurs have discovered your secret base, you should increase the defenses around it. King Zhen said calmly, they haven't found where it is yet. They're only guessing it exists. How do you know that? Luo Lan was taken aback. Based on how the saboteurs operate, King Zhen chuckled and went on, they would have already blown up the place if they discovered our nuclear test site. All of a sudden, Luo Lan shouted, hey, look up front. On the road ahead, a convoy of heavily armed vehicles were blocking their only path to Stronghold 111. There was the logo of the ginkgo leaf on the vehicles. Luo Lan was amused. The board seems to think rather highly of you. King Zhen waited for their own vehicles to come to a complete stop before getting out. A man dressed in a suit and wearing sunglasses approached them from the vehicle convoy opposite. King Zhen, do you know you're still under house arrest? King Zhen sincerely stated, Secretary Zhou, please let me explain. Weren't you all thinking of capturing that fatty, Luo Lan, to place him under house arrest? I've done that for you. Luo Lan echoed from the side, that's right. He captured me after such great efforts since I was really resistant to the idea of coming back. Secretary Zhou, who was clad in a suit, was taken aback. He had thought there would be a clash between him and the two brothers, so much so that he even brought troops over for this confrontation. But who knew that King Zhen would come up with that reason? He was a bit confused. Secretary Zhou sneered, don't think I don't know why you went to Stronghold 109. Where are those troops of yours? King Zhen, as a member of the consortium, how dare you raise personal troops? King Zhen said sadly, the troops were all killed during the capture of Luo Lan. Luo Lan hooted, that's right, do you think it's so easy to capture me? Secretary Zhou was so angry he laughed. What are you two putting on a crosstalk in front of me for? Calm spread on King Zhen's face. I'm giving you an out here, so just take it. In that instant, Secretary Zhou felt the hair on the back of his neck stand. It was as though the party in front of him was a tiger. Even though he was only standing quietly, he was like a ferocious beast that would make anyone tremble with fear. King Zhen walked over and took off Secretary Zhou's sunglasses to put them on himself. The sun's really harsh, and I just so happen to lack a pair of sunglasses. Secretary Zhou, I'm afraid you're still not qualified to ask me about those troops. The board will have to personally question me. Secretary Zhou turned around and went back to his vehicle. Let's see if you can still keep up the bluster after we get back to the stronghold. Then the convoy of vehicles started moving towards Stronghold 111. Secretary Zhou, who was in his car, could feel his hands trembling. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu's and Yang Xiaojun's injuries had gotten much better. They kept heading north, albeit not at a fast pace. Yang Xiaojun raised her head and glanced at the scorching sun in the sky. She asked, "We aren't going in the wrong direction, are we? Why can't we see Lu Yuan and the others yet?" "No," Ren Xiaosu said, "identifying directions is a basic skill in wilderness survival. However, I can't say if Yan Lu Yuan and the others might have gone the wrong way. That can't be. We saw so many campfires still around yesterday. It looked like there were quite a few people who managed to escape out of Stronghold 109, so they should be together with the rest of the escapees," Yang Xiaojun said. Chapter 193 Parting Ways. "I have a question," Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked. "Did y'all really discover King Zhen's nuclear test site?" Yang Xiaojun looked at him. "No, I was just bluffing King Zhen. His people had been in contact with several particle physicists. But soon after their meeting, those physicists all went missing, including their family members. However, the King Consortium has never made any foray into this field of research, so we suspect it's King Zhen's own private dealings. He must have his own private nuclear test site. Isn't he part of the King Consortium? Why does he have to defend against his own people in that case? He even set up an independent base of his own." Ren Xiaosu did not understand. Yang Xiaojun explained, because he knows very well that in the past 100 years or so, almost none of the King Consortium's shadows have come to a good end. A shadow will always remain as just a shadow. Oh, Ren Xiaosu nodded. So King Zhen was probably doing this for self-preservation. Yang Xiaojun said, "When we explain it to the others, we'd better say it was Zhu Xianqiu who saved us both. Otherwise, your superpower will get revealed very easily. I'm seriously advising you this time. You must not let anyone know you have the ability to copy someone else's powers. It'd be too dangerous if anyone found out." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. "Wait, but don't the saboteurs already know that Zhu Xianqiu isn't at Stronghold 109 anymore? So how are we supposed to say it was him who saved us?" Yang Xiaojun said, "Well, that was a bluff as well." Ha. In reality, Ren Xiaosu had many unanswered questions on his mind and was slowly answering them with Yang Xiaojun. "Is Lu Yuan also a member of the saboteurs? I saw you providing him with cover earlier." "He's not a member of the saboteurs," Yang Xiaojun said. "He's from the Yang Consortium. The Yang Consortium and the Li Consortium have been carrying out research and development on nanotech all this while, because they believe nanotech will provide a breakthrough in terms of individual combat prowess. Actually, King Zhen was right. The Yang Consortium is also planning to use nanotech to prepare for war." Then how are the saboteurs and the Yang Consortium related? Ren Xiaosu wondered. The saboteurs were created by the first supernatural being of the Yang Consortium. Yang Xiaojun explained, "Actually, the saboteurs have a complicated relationship with the Yang Consortium. Currently, the saboteurs and the Yang Consortium do not agree on their ideals and have gradually started moving in their own directions. It's just that the relationship between both parties is a little difficult to make clear. Actually, the saboteurs were not called such in the beginning, but since that was what everyone called us, we just went with it and took up that role in this chaotic world." Ren Xiaosu did not probe too much into the current relationship between the saboteurs and the Yang Consortium. After all, it seemed like that was Yang Xiaojun's family affairs. However, Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. After all, he was just a refugee. Yang Xiaojun came to a stop in front of a rock that had a strange symbol etched into it. From her pocket, she took out a finger-length metal stick and activated one end of it, shooting a flare into the sky. Ren Xiaosu quietly watched and thought that Yang Xiaojun must have discovered a sign that her fellow saboteurs had left for her to send them a signal. Suddenly, an off-road vehicle rushed out of a narrow pathway with Luo Xinyu waving out of the window from the backseat. "Xiaojun, I'm so glad you're fine." The off-road vehicle, being driven by Lu Yuan, came to a stop in front of Ren Xiaosu and Yang Xiaojun. Lu Yuan got out of the vehicle and said to Yang Xiaojun, "Let's go back home." This mission was a failure. The hard drive Xinyu managed to procure was taken from her by that fatty Luo. Yang Xiaojun took the hard drive out of her pocket. "King Zhen's giving it to the Yang Consortium, but I think he's just trying to deepen the conflict between the Yang Consortium and the Li Consortium. Doesn't really matter anyway. It's not like our two families had a good relationship in the first place." Luo Xinyu cheered. However, they were both more concerned about how Yang Xiaojun had managed to get out of trouble. Yang Xiaojun explained, "Zhu Xianchu and Ren Xiaosu teamed up and saved me. Zhu Xianchu is very powerful now, so we had better keep a close eye on him." Luo Xinyu was startled. "I went to the site of the battle and looked around. How did the two of them combined manage to become such a lethal force?" "It's mainly Zhu Xianchu's credit. But he's already heading to Stronghold 178, Yang Xiaojun said calmly. "Oh, we can return home then." Luo Xinyu quipped at Ren Xiaosu, "Hey, Ren Xiaosu, do you want to come with us to Stronghold 88? Ren Xiaosu was stunned before shaking his head and saying, "No, it's fine. I still have to search for my brother." Yang Xiaojun looked at him. "I've got to go now." Ren Xiaosu made a noise in acknowledgement. Yang Xiaojun said, "After you find Yan Luyuan and the others, come to Stronghold 88. I'll wait for you there." "All right." Then Yang Xiaojun hopped into the off-road vehicle. Lu Yuan stepped on the accelerator and the off-road vehicle roared into the distance. In fact, Ren Xiaosu knew the two of them would eventually have to bid each other farewell. But when adults parted ways, it was always an easy thing to do. Sorrowful goodbyes were only reserved for poets. If they wanted to meet again, they'd definitely be able to. Ren Xiaosu watched as the vehicle got further and further away. He suddenly remembered and shouted, "Hey, give me a ride if you're going north." However, the off-road vehicle was too far away. Snowflakes suddenly drifted down from the sky. This was the first snow of winter this year and it looked heavier than usual. The snowflakes fluttering down from the sky seemed almost like they were here to clean off the bloodstains from this wasteland. There were already quite a few campfires burning at a campsite in the north. Thousands and thousands of people were shivering in the cold wilderness. The campfires in front of these people were the only thing that provided them some warmth. Even though the experimentals had broken into the city and gone on a killing spree, there was still only slightly over 1,000 of them. Meanwhile, the number of residents living in the stronghold was in the hundreds of thousands, so there were quite a lot of people who managed to escape the siege. Furthermore, the little girl next to Li Shenton had also participated in the battle and opened up a path of escape for a group of residents. Li Shenton and that little girl named Si Liren had gone off to someplace unknown. The escapees had begged for the two to bring them along, so Li Shenton told them to head north and find a group of people who rode on bicycles so that their survival would be ensured. From the sounds of it, Li Shenton was playing a little joke on Ren Xiaosu. The escapees revered Li Shenton like a god who had saved them, but they didn't know he was actually one of those who had brought this disaster upon them. After getting his revenge on the Li Consortium in Stronghold 109, Li Shenton did not make any further moves there. Instead, he headed off to the other stronghold cities that were under the control of the Li Consortium. He seemed to be planning on bringing down the entire Li Consortium all on his own. Eventually, the escapees located the cycling group, who happened to be fixing their bicycles after heading north. Compared to Yan Luyuan and the others who were riding on bicycles and carrying backpacks, the escapees appeared to be in a much more miserable state. At this moment, Wang Fugui said mysteriously, "Luyuan, I found something good that might be of great use." Yan Luyuan looked at Wang Fugui and asked, "Uncle Fugui, what did you find?" Wang Fugui carefully took out a deck of cards. "See this, it's a pack of explosives." Chapter 194 Xixia. Yan Luyuan looked at the old deck of cards in Wang Fugui's hand. He explained to him earnestly, in my brother's hands, the cards would be bombs. But in your hands, they can only be used to play fight the landlord. Off to the side, Wang Delong said, can't we play 3-card brag, 1, instead? Yan Luyuan paused for a moment. Well, you can. Wang Fugui might have been surprised by Ren Xiaosu's 4 3s, the last time around, so he still had some lingering thoughts. When he found a pack of cards that someone had dropped, he was quite happy about it. They were ammo to him. However, when Yan Luyuan told Wang Fugui he could not use it, he smacked his lips and said, I'll keep it for Ren Xiaosu. Yan Luyuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Ren Xiaosu's cards might seem like ordinary cards, but they were really conjured up by his superpower. As all the other refugees cried in misery, Yan Luyuan and company were caught in a heated discussion about card games. It even seemed like they might start playing Fight the Landlord at any moment now. Truly, there was a difference between being prepared and unprepared. Although it was very cold outside in the wilderness and would be quite difficult to bear even if you were prepared, people usually lived in comparison to others. When you saw other people in a miserable state, you wouldn't think you had it that bad anymore. Chen Wudi mumbled from off to the side, Master will get abducted by the ruler of Womanland soon, and y'all are still in the mood to play cards. Wang Fugui chuckled heartily and said, don't worry, Master will definitely not ditch us. Really? Chen Wudi's eyes lit up. Of course, Wang Fugui said with a smile. Chen Wudi said, then let's play 3-card brag, I'm pretty damn good at it. All of a sudden, a cry rang out from the crowd in the distance. Chen Wudi immediately stood up and turned his attention to them. He saw a man trying to snatch a scarf from a plump woman. Snow blanketed the ground with white. The man must have been unable to bear the cold since he was only wearing his full clothing. However, he didn't dare snatch the other men's clothing, so he could only snatch some from a woman. A woman's clothes wouldn't fit him, but a scarf would still be useful. It can be difficult to imagine how despicable some people can get in the face of adversity. The man was willing to resort to any means necessary as long as it meant survival for him. But this was only the beginning of their escape. For refugees like Yan Luyuan, Xiaoyu, and the others, all of them knew quite well that things would only get worse for this group of escapees. During the previous escape, the weather was not this cold. As such, human nature did not get pushed to such desperate straits. There wasn't a lack of food either at that time since they managed to locate a field full of sweet potatoes. But it was different this time. The evil side of human nature thoroughly surfaced at this moment, baring its fangs. Chen Wudi stood up and strode over. Get your hands off her. That man looked at Chen Wudi. Mind your fucking business. Chen Wudi was tickled pink by this man. As the great sage reborn, I have to poke my nose into the injustices of this world. If you don't let her go, this punch of mine might just kill you. By the campfire, Yan Luyuan and the others quietly watched this unfold. They all knew Chen Wudi's character. In the past, everyone had suspected that Chen Wudi might be putting on an act. But they realized later that he was simply a guy who imagined himself a hero. Actually, when Yan Luyuan followed Ren Xiaosu to the bar to listen to the storyteller's stories when he was younger, he also had fancied himself becoming a hero in the future. But Ren Xiaosu told him at that time that other than tears, this world did not believe in heroes. Back then, Yan Luyuan felt that Ren Xiaosu was lying, since he was clearly very inspired by the stories too. So Ren Xiaosu must also have had dreams of becoming a hero. It was just that he had suppressed the thought of it. If giving up on physical strength was the price humans paid for gaining intelligence, then crushing his dreams would be the price Ren Xiaosu paid for survival. However, Yan Luyuan felt that the fact that since Ren Xiaosu chose to help Jiang Wu and bring Chen Wudi along with them on their escape, it showed Ren Xiaosu had not completely given up on his dream of becoming a hero. At this moment, the man who snatched the woman's scarf threw a punch at Chen Wudi. However, Chen Wudi didn't even dodge and just let the punch land on his face. With a crack, the man's wrist apparently broke while Chen Wudi looked totally unaffected. Yan Luyuan shouted from afar, "Don't kill him." Chen Wudi said, "Okay." After that, Chen Wudi lightly punched the man's stomach. The man slowly tumbled to the ground as his entire body turned numb from the attack. Chen Wudi said, "That's a small lesson for you as an example to everyone else." The woman whose scarf had been snatched stood up and came over to retrieve it. Then she hurried over to Chen Wudi and said, thank you so much. It's no big deal." Chen Wudi was about to turn and leave. But the woman suddenly seemed like she wanted to get closer to Chen Wudi. She said, "It seems like we were fated to meet. In this wilderness, there would always be a greater chance of survival with help from others." Chen Wudi and company, who were riding on bicycles, stood out too much, so everyone else knew they were well prepared for the escape and even had food with them. As such, this woman was looking to cotton up to Chen Wudi. Chen Wudi turned his head. "Ha, fated." The woman shyly twirled her hair. "Aren't you the great sage? My name is Zixia, Zhao Zixia." Chen Wudi looked like he had been struck by lightning. "You're Zixia, but you don't look that age." Zhao Zixia joked, "I might have been reborn a few years before you." Chen Wudi despaired a little. "How is that a few years? It's more like a decade, at least. Aren't you jumping the gun?" However, Chen Wudi calmed down and said, "Big sis, I'm sorry, but I'm not your version of the great sage." Yan Luyuan and the others were laughing themselves silly over at the campfire. When Chen Wudi came back, no one held back from teasing him. Previously, Chen Wudi had said that he was searching for Zixia, a fairy immortal, but no one thought he would suddenly change the version of the great sage now that he had finally found her. He could even switch the version of the great sage. That was probably Chen Wudi's last route of retreat he had left for himself. At the beginning, Yan Luyuan and Ren Xiaosu thought Zixia was just a relationship setback trope Chen Wudi had created for himself. Now that Zixia had personally appeared and met him, she helped Chen Wudi cut himself off from all mortal desires. Right at this moment, Yan Luyuan caught sight of a figure of a person slowly making their way over in the snowy weather. The escapees started whispering among themselves as they never expected someone to still be coming from the direction of Stronghold 109 at such a time. Before everyone else could react, Chen Wudi and the others stood up. Yan Luyuan waved his hands excitedly and shouted, "Bro! Over here, over here!" Although Yan Luyuan knew Ren Xiaosu was definitely fine, he could only feel truly at ease after seeing him again. For Yan Luyuan, there wasn't a point in living comfortably if Ren Xiaosu wasn't around to accompany him. Chapter 195 Respect the old and care for the young. When Yan Luyuan shouted to Ren Xiaosu, some people who did not notice Ren Xiaosu turned to look at him as well. The escapees did not quite understand why Yan Luyuan's group had not ridden the bicycles when they clearly had them. Instead, they just pushed their bicycles along with the crowd without any panic. But now, everyone realized this group of people did not escape as quickly as possible by cycling because they had been waiting for someone. But where had this young man who just walked over from the frozen, snowy land outside gone before this? Surely he could not have just escaped from the stronghold, right? After all, the stronghold was filled with terrifying experimentals, so who could possibly escape from there? They should be the last wave of people who'd fled from there. Suddenly, a girl in the crowd realized she knew Ren Xiaosu. Wasn't that the scoundrel who deliberately caused her to score badly on her exams? This girl was Li Mo, and she had sat behind Ren Xiaosu during the final exams. After the exams were over, she had gone to Ren Xiaosu's class to seek revenge on him. However, she did not even manage to confront him. Furthermore, the students in class 12 to 7 really pissed her off when they claimed they were actually protecting her by stopping her from taking her revenge. Amid the escaping crowd, she saw Ren Xiaosu walking over from the wilderness. For some reason, she felt those students might have been telling the truth and had not deliberately been trying to piss her off. As Ren Xiaosu passed through the crowd, he knew a lot of people were looking at him. However, he was not exactly bothered by it. He had been walking in the frozen, snowy land for a long time and almost lost his way. It was not that he had bad wilderness survival, but that he could not even get landmarks to use as a reference in the heavy snowfall. He only found Yan Luyuan and company because of his strong sense of direction. He really should have been smarter and hitched a ride with Yang Xiaojun's group. If he had, he wouldn't have had to go through all this trouble. When Ren Xiaosu sat down next to the campfire, Yan Luyuan immediately handed him some hot water and porridge. "Bro, did you manage to save the ruler of Womanland?" Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "Who's the ruler of Womanland?" Yan Luyuan chuckled. Big Sister Xiaojun. Ren Xiaosu was confused. Wait, when did Yang Xiaojun become the ruler of Womanland? He looked at Chen Wudi. Did you give her that nickname? Stop talking nonsense. Chen Wudi smirked. Only names can be given wrongly. How can nicknames be called wrong? Yan Luyuan kept a straight face and told Ren Xiaosu about the Zixia incident that happened earlier. Ren Xiaosu was also amused. Wudi, will you still look for Zixia in the future? Chen Wudi froze. Zixia? Who? Oh, so you've already forgotten about her. Ren Xiaosu said with a sigh, how amazing that you can switch versions of yourself. Hey, didn't you used to insist on looking for Zixia? Chen Wudi said in seriousness, Master, I'm crazy, not stupid. Ren Xiaosu pondered what he just said but couldn't figure out the difference even after a long time. At this moment, an old lady walked towards them with a child in hand. Ren Xiaosu turned around and had a look at them. He thought that if they wanted to share the campfire to keep themselves warm, he could make some space for them. It was really cold out, after all, and they were an elder and child. But when the old lady came up to them, she said to Ren Xiaosu, you people should take the initiative to share your food with the elderly and children. I've been observing you all for some time, but as a group of young people, you all aren't even virtuous enough to respect the old and care for the young. How did your parents teach you? Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. To be honest, he had not expected such a twist. No one in town had ever mentioned anything about respecting the old and caring for the young before. Like refugees would be so free to discuss virtues and whatnot. So he didn't expect someone would act so righteous to get him to share their food with the elderly and children. It was getting late into the night, and the temperature dropped rapidly again. It was really not easy for an elderly person to take care of a child while escaping. If this old lady had just asked nicely for some food to be shared with them, Ren Xiaosu would have given it to her. But since she spoke with that attitude, Ren Xiaosu couldn't help feeling disgusted. To be honest, he could not understand how someone like her managed to escape from the stronghold. The child pointed to the golden circlet on Chen Wudi's head and said, Grandma, I want that. Yan Luyuan mischievously explained, that can't be removed. I don't care, I want it, the child said selfishly. The old lady looked at Chen Wudi. What's the big deal with letting my grandson play with your hairband for a while? And why is a grown man like you even wearing a hairband? Ren Xiaosu wanted to laugh aloud. Then a woman next to them said, what's wrong with you people? Can't you let the child play with it? Saying that, she removed a hairpin from her hair and gave it to the child. Here, play with Auntie's hairpin instead. However, the child slapped the hairpin to the ground and started crying. I don't want yours, I want his. Ren Xiaosu threw another 2 pieces of firewood into the campfire and said with a smile, you'll better get lost while I'm still in control of myself. In a world like this, you still dare to boss people around. I feel that you might not get to the next stronghold. The old lady said with a stuck-up look, I'm an ancillary family member of the Li Consortium. Even though one of our strongholds has been lost, the Li Consortium's forces from the other strongholds will definitely come to our rescue soon. So don't think you can behave as you like, all lawlessly. Get lost, Ren Xiaosu calmly said. The child got afraid when he saw Ren Xiaosu's calm expression. He hid behind the old lady and said, Grandma, let's go. I'm scared. After saying that, he dragged the old lady back into the crowd. It was as though he wanted to get as far away from Ren Xiaosu as possible. Even while the old lady was leaving, she was still scolding and swearing at them. Chen Wudi wondered, Master, why are there people like her in this world? She was clearly in the wrong, yet she acted as though she were the righteous one and took advantage of her seniority by emphasizing, respecting the old and caring for the young. Ren Xiaosu sighed. Wudi, I know that you want to be a hero and uphold justice. But if you think that everyone in this world has goodness in their hearts, then you haven't met everyone yet. Bro, where are we headed next? Yan Luyuan said, if we keep going north, we'll end up in the King Consortium's territory. These Li Consortium residents probably don't even know where they are right now. Even if the Li Consortium really sends reinforcements over, they won't bump into them. Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought and replied, let's go to Stronghold 88. Stronghold 88. Yan Luyuan was stunned. Whose territory is that? Why should we go there? Ren Xiaosu thought for a while and said, I have an acquaintance there. If we go to Stronghold 88, it'll be easier for us to obtain legal resident statuses and whatnot. You can even attend school. After chatting with King Zhen, Yang Xiaojun, and Luo Lan, Ren Xiaosu really wanted to learn more about this world through education. He might not even need to go to school since Yang Xiaojun mentioned there was a huge library in Stronghold 88. Okay, whatever you say. Yan Luyuan asked, but where is Stronghold 88? A bolt of lightning struck Ren Xiaosu. Oh, right, where is Stronghold 88? Chapter 196 Stealing Bicycles. In current times, maps of the areas that were under the control of an organization were rarely made available to the public. As such, most people did not really have a clear concept of the geography. Usually, people would just describe the location of the next stronghold with terms like in front, behind, to the left, to the right, up north, or down south. As for the exact distance and where they were precisely located, no one really knew. Ren Xiaosu thought about how all those strongholds were actually a huge alliance, yet no one came up with a complete map of the lands. The organizations were all guarding against each other as though they were thieves. Of course, he felt that the various organizations would probably have more detailed maps but kept them secret. This led to Ren Xiaosu feeling embarrassed when he discovered he did not know where Stronghold 88 was even though he suggested going there. Ren Xiaosu thought for a while. It's not a big deal. It should be somewhere to the north. We should be able to get there with a bit of walking. Bro, why do I feel like you're also uncertain about what you said? Yan Luyuan said. He checked with Jiang Wu, who was beside him, but realized she also did not know where Stronghold 88 was. According to Yang Xiaojun, there were two strongholds between Stronghold 88 and Stronghold 109. The entire distance of the journey should be between 500 to 1,000 kilometers, so it might be quite difficult to get there just by walking. When normal people looked to travel to another stronghold, they tended to head to the nearby ones. It was impossible to get to those that were too far away. It was only the organizations that were capable of traveling across the wasteland. So it wasn't a surprise that Jiang Wu did not know where Stronghold 88 was. Bro, are we going to ride a 1,000 kilometers on our bikes? Yan Luyuan felt despair when he thought about it. Ren Xiaosu thought for a while. Why don't we try to get our hands on a car after we get to the next stronghold? We can then drive to Stronghold 88. Get our hands on a car. Bro, why don't you just say we're stealing one? You don't need to mince your words. Yan Luyuan said, currently, the King Consortium's Stronghold 111 is the closest to us. If you've already decided on stealing a car, I suggest that we go there to steal one. King Zhen and Luo Lan should be on their way back to Stronghold 111. Ren Xiaosu pondered and said, I think it would be best to avoid going there. After all, those two are bellicose people, so it's not good to be interacting with them too much. Bro, seeing as you're so insistent on going to Stronghold 88, that acquaintance you mentioned should be Yang Xiaojun, right? Yan Luyuan suddenly asked. You always have so much to say. Ren Xiaosu glared at him. Rest early. We'll start pushing faster tomorrow and go north first. If we encounter a stronghold along the way, we can stop at the town outside of it for a while. Once we find out where Stronghold 88 is, we can continue there. Ren Xiaosu felt it was better to stay away from the King Consortium's Stronghold 111, as well as the Li Consortium. Otherwise, they might just get involved in the wrath of Li Shenton's vengeance. When he thought of Li Shenton, he sensed the only interest the young man had after getting out of the psychiatric hospital was revenge. But then, the howling of wolves came from the distance. Following, more howling sounded in the quiet wilderness, scaring people. Some of the escapees who had fallen asleep jolted awake. They looked around in a panic and wondered why they had to encounter the wolves so soon after escaping from the claws of the experimentals. So it was actually that dangerous in the wilderness. Someone said softly, everyone, look at the hilltop over there. Everyone looked over and saw several hundred white wolves as large as bison standing atop a hill and staring at them quietly. The size of the white wolves was utterly different from what the stronghold residents had been taught. The wolves they learned about in the textbooks were not this big. If these wolves attacked the escapees' campsite, more than half of them would likely get killed or injured tonight. On top of that, the remaining survivors would find it hard to escape the pursuit of the wolves. Ren Xiaosu did not say anything as he knew the wolves would not attack the escapees' campsite. That was because if these wolves would have attacked a campsite, his group would have died during their last escape from Stronghold 113. But he could not understand why these wolves kept following him everywhere. Ren Xiaosu's intuition told him the wolves were here because of their small group, not because of other escapees. However, he was not 100% sure of that. But the escapees did not know this. When they saw wolves had arrived, they leapt up and continued fleeing north. When Ren Xiaosu saw the escapees were starting to move again, he said, "Let's keep up with the bigger group for now." As Ren Xiaosu's voice trailed off, Jiang Wu started waking up her students who were still asleep. They did not ask why and just followed wherever Ren Xiaosu went. A group of people were riding bicycles and blending into the right side of the escapees group. As the road here was not that bumpy, it was much easier to escape on their bicycles than running on foot. The physical exertion between the two was completely on a different level. There's no need to ride too fast. Just keep up with the pace of the crowd, Ren Xiaosu instructed. Yan Luyuan happened to turn around at this moment and saw Ren Xiaosu sitting on the back of Chen Wudi's bicycle and giving out instructions in high spirits. "Bro, you still haven't learned how to ride a bike?" Yan Luyuan asked. Ren Xiaosu kept a straight face and said, "I learned how to ride it, but I've lost my bike." "Bro, why don't you take my bicycle while I get a ride from you instead?" Yan Luyuan said. Ren Xiaosu said matter-of-factly, "Luyuan, you're already an adult, so you should be riding your own bike." Yan Luyuan lamented, "Bro, you're the most shameless person I've ever met. No one else comes close." Jiang Wu and her students were cycling behind Ren Xiaosu's group. As they rode along, they felt they really could survive longer just by following Ren Xiaosu. Suddenly, two escapees who saw the students riding bicycles came over and tried to take them away from them. Everyone knew they would escape faster with a proper mode of transportation. Besides, Jiang Wu's students looked like clear pushovers, so some of these people started getting ideas about the bicycles. The two escapees grabbed hold of a student's shirt and shouted, "Get off." They then proceeded to push the student off the bicycle. Chen Wudi jumped off his bike and leaped in front of the two escapees in a single bound. "How dare the two of you behave so insolently in front of the great sage?" Chen Wudi sent them flying backwards in an instant with a punch and a kick. One of them even had their leg twisted unnaturally. Chen Wudi picked up the bicycle and handed it back to the student. "Keep your guard up. Shout for me if anyone else dares to come and steal your bicycle." Again. That female student looked at Chen Wudi and said in a daze, "Thank you." "There's no need to thank me. You should thank my master instead," Chen Wudi said as he waved it off. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu was the one who felt most downcast. Ren Xiaosu had only sat behind Chen Wudi on his bicycle as he thought he was stronger, so would not be burdened by his weight and get too tired. He could never have expected Chen Wudi to actually jump off the bicycle while it was still moving. With a loud crash, Ren Xiaosu fell to the ground together with the bicycle. Chapter 197 The Wolf King's Act of Goodwill. With Ren Xiaosu's physical fitness, he would not get injured from just falling off a bicycle. He dusted off the dirt and snow on him and got back on his feet. "Woody, if you see any injustice in the future, just let me handle it. You should focus on riding the bike, alright?" "Oh, sure thing, master." Chen Wudi hurriedly picked the bicycle up and continued riding with Ren Xiaosu as he caught up to the group. Ren Xiaosu turned around and looked at the wolves on the hilltop. The white wolves were not alarmed by the sight of the escapees running away and stood there motionlessly in the snow. It was as though they had nothing better to do and were only here to take a gander. But Ren Xiaosu could not understand what their motives were. In front of him, Chen Wudi was pedaling hard and saying, "Master, why are there always people in this world who think nothing of hurting others to achieve the goals?" "Humans are self-serving," Ren Xiaosu replied nonchalantly. "What about people who try to get something without making any effort for it?" Chen Wudi asked. "That's also because humans are self-serving," Ren Xiaosu replied. Chen Wudi suddenly sounded a little depressed. "Master, do you think I should still fight against injustices in the future? There are so many bad people out there. What if the people I saved turn out to be bad as well? Ren Xiaosu could feel the contradiction inside of Chen Wudi. It seemed like his dream of becoming a hero was starting to waver. Although Ren Xiaosu did not want to be a hero himself, he found this quality in Chen Wudi's nature to be praiseworthy. Ren Xiaosu patiently explained to Chen Wudi, "You can continue saving others if you wish to save them. But if you discover that they're bad people after you've saved them, you can just beat them to death." "Okay." Chen Wudi nodded vigorously in response. All of a sudden, a scream came from the fleeing crowd. A woman shouted, "Someone has taken my belongings. Everyone, please help me. He snatched my bag." Immediately, Ren Xiaosu jumped off the bicycle in anticipation of what might happen. By the time he landed on the ground, he saw that Chen Wudi had already rushed to that woman to help her and left the bicycle behind with no one to control it. Ren Xiaosu felt sad. It was still better for him to learn how to ride a bicycle. It wouldn't do if he had to keep depending on others like this. After a while, Chen Wudi ran back after beating up another man. When he saw the bicycle lying on the ground, he was a little embarrassed. "Master, I'm sorry. I forgot you were on the bike again." It's fine, it's fine." Ren Xiaosu had no alternative but to dismiss it. "But with so many people here, you can't possibly handle everything, right? I'm afraid that you will exhaust yourself to death if you continue dealing with every little matter." Moreover, this was just the beginning of their escape. There would probably be many more instances of such bullying among the escapees in the future. "Then I'll just handle them one at a time," Chen Wudi said hesitantly. "I can't possibly just ignore them." After fleeing for a while more, Ren Xiaosu suddenly called out to his group, "All right, let's stop here. The wolves aren't pursuing us. Besides, if they were really chasing after us, none of us could get away." Yan Luyuan and the others came to a stop. When the other escapees saw them stopping, they also slowly stopped in their tracks. Everyone was weary to the bone now. The only good thing that came of this was that they did not feel as cold after some exercise. Now that they had fled to a new location, they would have to rebuild their campfires and collect more firewood to burn. Some people who were too lazy to go around doing all that again just laid in the snow. Meanwhile, Yan Luyuan led the group of students who did not mind the trouble of restarting their campfire. This was what Ren Xiaosu had requested of them. No matter how cold or tired they were in the snowy wilderness, they were required to make a campfire. Otherwise, they would pay a hefty price. "Bro," Yan Luyuan asked, puzzled, "did you sense anything strange about those wolves?" "You sensed it as well?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "Yes," Yan Luyuan said, "I keep having the feeling that the Wolf King is constantly watching me from afar. It's like I can feel its gaze on me all the time." This was something new to Ren Xiaosu since he did not feel that he was being watched. When it was late at night and Ren Xiaosu saw that everyone around them had fallen asleep, he reminded Chen Wudi and Yan Luyuan, who were keeping watch, to be careful. He needed to go somewhere for a while. Ren Xiaosu walked into the wilderness with great doubts on his mind. He was going in the direction of where the wolves had appeared. The snow was very deep. Ever since the cataclysm, the winters would get exceptionally cold, and the snowfall also became much heavier. He walked towards the wilderness with some difficulty in the snow. Some escapees who were still awake were shocked when they realized someone was brave enough to venture into the wilderness at such time. Is he going for a potty break? Maybe, but wasn't he the one who came from the wilderness alone and joined us? Look at how well prepared the group is. They probably knew something was going to happen to the stronghold. How did they know? A woman who had her face concealed behind a scarf was secretly watching Ren Xiaosu's receding figure. Suddenly, someone beside her said in surprise, "Aren't you Fang Yujing?" Even though she had concealed herself very well, someone still recognized her. The person said happily, "It's really you. I'm your fan. I heard you were going to be participating for a couple days in the music festival, but I never thought something like this would happen." Fang Yujing forced a smile. "It's good enough that we're all still alive." When she turned her eyes back to Ren Xiaosu, she discovered he had disappeared into the distance. Ren Xiaosu crested a tiny hillock and was surprised to see the wolves playing in the snow. Several of the females even had a dozen little wolf cubs with them. The wolf cubs seemed unafraid of Ren Xiaosu as they looked over from afar. Ren Xiaosu did not dare go any closer as he was worried the wolves would suddenly attack him. He just wanted to see what was going on with the wolves here. But before that, he would have to ascertain if the wolves saw him as prey. The strong and powerful males in the wolf pack stood still in the snow and observed him. Then they moved aside for the wolf king as it made its way over from the rear with a large rabbit dangling from its mouth. The rabbit was still warm and dripping with blood. Ren Xiaosu stood still. He wanted to see what the wolf king was planning to do, while the black saber was getting restless as it kept buzzing in the palace. The rabbit was as large as a bicycle tire. Ren Xiaosu didn't know what it ate to grow to this size. He could see condensation coming from the rabbit's warm blood as it dripped onto the snow. The wolf king stopped not far from Ren Xiaosu and placed the rabbit on the ground. Ren Xiaosu wondered, "Are you giving that to me?" But the wolf king did not respond. It just turned around and left with its pack. Ren Xiaosu could only watch as they padded away. This confused Ren Xiaosu even more. Had the wolf pack gotten so sociable that they even sent food to humans? But what astonished him was that the number of wolves seemed to have increased by a lot this time. It looked like the Wolf King had been tirelessly accepting new wolves into its pack. Chapter 198 The Escapees Attempt Robbery. In the middle of the night, Ren Xiaosu's sudden walk into the wilderness by himself shocked many people. No matter what he intended to do, the fact that someone would venture out alone was very surprising to the escapees. After all, the wolves were still out there. But now Ren Xiaosu returned carrying a large rabbit in tow. Did he go hunting just now? Seeing as the weather was freezing as snow continued falling heavily from the sky, a lot of people were worried they would get buried under the snow when they woke up. But even in such bad weather, someone still went out to hunt and returned with such a large rabbit. When the Wolf King dropped the rabbit, the snow was already very deep. Ren Xiaosu watched quietly as the Wolf King cleared a path through the snow by walking in front while the other wolves followed behind it. That would make the walk much easier in the snow. Ren Xiaosu did not know what the Wolf King's intention was when it left him a rabbit. But he found it a little odd. On the way back to the campsite, he noticed many people staring at him in surprise. However, Ren Xiaosu would never explain to them that the wolves gave him the rabbit. When he got back, Yan Luyuan asked, "Bro, did you hunt the rabbit yourself?" Ren Xiaosu whispered, "The wolves gave it to me. That Wolf King doesn't seem to have any malice towards us. For now, we won't have to worry too much. At the very least, we don't have to worry about the wolves attacking us." If the wolves had any malicious intent, killing Ren Xiaosu just now would definitely have been the best opportunity they had. After all, the distance between them earlier was just a leap away. Ren Xiaosu was not in a hurry to eat the rabbit. Since everyone was already asleep and ate dinner in the evening, they definitely would not feel too hungry yet. The escapees around them were so hungry their eyes gleamed upon seeing the rabbit. After all, some of them did not have anything to eat as they fled over the past 2 days. If it hadn't snowed today, they would not even have replenished the water lost from their bodies. The snow may have looked white, but it was not as clean as you would think. Ren Xiaosu knew the escapees would pay the price for casually putting things in their mouths when they woke up the next morning. Currently, only a minuscule number of escapees still had any food left on them, while most of the others were famished with nothing to eat. When some people saw Ren Xiaosu bringing such a large rabbit back, their eyes lit up. Some of those people were whispering among themselves, apparently discussing something. Yan Luyuan glanced at Ren Xiaosu. "Bro, you'd better make an example of some of them quickly so that the others won't get any ideas." Ren Xiaosu looked up at those escapees. "Upon identifying the ringleaders, we'll kill them off. Woody, make sure to protect everyone when it gets chaotic later. I'll handle the killing." When Ren Xiaosu mentioned killing people, his expression didn't change. Then he noticed Jiangwu had also woken up. Jiangwu said, "Xiaosu, do you have any weapons to spare? Can you lend one to me?" Jiangwu and her students had also brought a lot of food with them. Although the escapees looked like they were only interested in the rabbit for now, Jiangwu's group was also in danger of being targeted. However, Jiangwu did not request Ren Xiaosu to protect them as well. Instead, she wanted to borrow a weapon from him so they could protect themselves. Because Jiangwu and her students had a separate campfire, it looked like they were two separate groups of people. Ren Xiaosu had also mentioned to Jiang Wu before that they would have to depend on themselves once they had escaped into the wilderness. Ren Xiaosu smiled and quietly handed a gun to Jiang Wu. After the events of Stronghold 109, he had amassed quite a few firearms in his storage space. At the very least, he had enough to issue one to each person in the group. When the Li Consortium's troops were attacked by those under the control of Li Shenton, many soldiers had died and a lot of the guns went missing. Ren Xiaosu was there at the scene. "Ms. Jiang, do you know how to use a gun?" Ren Xiaosu asked. Jiang Wu shook her head. "No." Ren Xiaosu asked again, "Then have you killed a person before?" "No." Jiang Wu shook her head again. However, her tone soon became determined as she said, "For the sake of my students, I can do it. Why not you give the gun to a male student to hold? Wang Yuqi looks quite strong. He can learn how to do this," Ren Xiaosu said. "No," Jiang Wu said, "their responsibility right now is to learn, not kill people. I know it's not good to be so protective of them in times like these, but I know people change after killing someone. As long as I can protect them for one more day, I don't need them shouldering such sins." Chen Wudi, who was next to them, suddenly said, "If I don't descend into the underworld, who will?" Ren Xiaosu told Chen Wudi, "With a teacher like Jiang Wu around, you being a hero will have meaning." At this moment, someone within the escapees group stood up and led others towards Ren Xiaosu's group. Ren Xiaosu smiled at Yan Luyuan and said, "Remember the faces of these people." As the escapees walked over aggressively, Ren Xiaosu was surprised to discover the old lady who tried using her seniority to her advantage also within the crowd. But Chen Wudi's expression seemed a bit strange. "Master, there's someone in that crowd I've helped before." A man had his jacket taken by someone else, but Chen Wudi managed to prevent the robbery in time. But now, that man ended up joining forces with others to rob Chen Wudi and his group. Ren Xiaosu did not know what to say. The group of escapees walked up to Ren Xiaosu's group and said, "I'm sure you all knew beforehand that something would happen to the stronghold, right? Did you people have anything to do with what happened at Stronghold 109? Why, are you all trying to gain the moral high ground?" Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "The Li Consortium, the Qing Consortium, and the Yang Consortium all knew that something was going to happen at the Stronghold, yet none of you knew a thing." The people in the group looked at one another as this was their first time hearing about this. But soon, someone raised their voice and snapped, "There's so few of you here. Can you even finish eating so much food? Also, you are so well prepared with supplies, so why can't you just help everyone?" As that person spoke, one of them came over in an attempt to take the large rabbit away. Ren Xiaosu sneered as he took out his pistol and fired it into the air. The crowd of people was stunned. They did not expect Ren Xiaosu to have a gun on him. The crowd started retreating quietly. Some of them even pulled others in front of them to shield themselves. They were hoping they would not be the ones to die when the bullets flew. "Who were the ones who suggested you rob us?" Ren Xiaosu asked with a smile. Noisy chatter filled the escapees group. "It wasn't me. I think it was that guy in blue." The man in blue said in panic, "It wasn't me, don't lie. I said not to come over, yet you people insisted on doing so." Enough with the arguing. Ren Xiaosu calmed down. "I know who they are." He raised his hand and shot the instigators that were standing at the front. In a mere 2 seconds, Ren Xiaosu had already identified and shot the 3 masterminds dead. Everyone in the crowd started screaming and retreating. Not only did they not expect Ren Xiaosu to have a gun, they did not expect he would open fire on them. This was what you would call a mob. They did not have any goals nor considered the consequences before doing things. When something really happened, they would be easily scared off by just one person. The man Chen Wudi had helped fell to the ground after losing his balance and got trampled by the crowd. He could not stand up again. All of a sudden, someone shouted, "Let's take the food from those students since they can't fight back." They shifted their attention to Jiang Wu and her students immediately. The escapees all knew that Jiang Wu's group also had food on them. Chapter 199 Jiang Wu turned superhuman. The escapees who had gone hungry for 2 days acted as though they were under a spell. When they heard the word, food, everyone made a mad dash to Jiang Wu's group. They had long since noticed this group of people. Although Jiang Wu and her students were on good terms with Ren Xiaosu's group, there was still a separation between them. Didn't the two groups also sit separately while eating? But they did not understand that Jiang Wu was only trying to be independent so they would not become a burden to Ren Xiaosu's group. Just as the crowd was about to make a rush for Jiang Wu and her students, Chen Wudi stepped forward to get between them. Since he had been instructed by his master to protect the campsite, he would have to do it even if 1,000,000 troops descended down on them. To Chen Wudi, the people in front of him were no longer escapees but heinous demons. From his point of view, their faces had turned to dark, smoky appearances, and their hands and feet had become animalistic claws. But, before Chen Wudi could get in front of Jiang Wu, he saw her resolutely raise her pistol and shoot it into the crowd. The people who bounded at her had shocked expressions on their faces. Someone fell to the ground after unexpectedly getting shot, and there was even an incredulous look on his face as he dropped to the ground. After the victim's heart got shot, his blood splattered out from the gunshot wound and stained Jiang Wu's fair cheeks blood red. However, the students did not feel scared at the sight of this. Rather, they thought the bloodstains resembled plum blossoms in the snow. The crowd got frightened off after hearing the second gunshot and retreated. Jiang Wu did not lower her pistol and panted heavily, as though dazed. From the side, Ren Xiaosu watched the scene unfold. This world had even forced someone as nice as Jiang Wu into shooting and killing others. Xiaoyu walked over and slowly removed the pistol from Jiang Wu's hand. Only then did Jiang Wu come back to her senses. Xiaoyu comforted, "Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry." Ren Xiaosu looked at Jiang Wu and asked, "Are you scared?" In the frozen, snowy lands, the flickering, red-orange campfire illuminated Jiang Wu's face very gently. Jiang Wu turned to Ren Xiaosu and said tearfully, "If I don't descend into the underworld, who will?" Ren Xiaosu was surprised to see the bloodstains that had been splattered on Jiang Wu starting to move involuntarily towards her hand. When they finally finished gathering in her hand, a crimson plum blossom was produced. It had formed into a single stalk of a single plum blossom in her hand, the petals of the flower all sharp as knives. Following, all 5 plum blossom petals detached from the stalk and started hovering around Jiang Wu as though they were protecting her. A faint breeze circulated around Jiang Wu as it made her soft hair flutter and come alive. Ren Xiaosu threw a dry log at Jiang Wu as he had thought of something. The plum blossom petals apparently perceived it and crushed the log into pieces. This time, it was Ren Xiaosu's turn to be stunned. He had never expected that Jiang Wu would become a superhuman with one shot from a gun. Her students went over and looked at Jiang Wu happily. When they approached her, the plum blossom petals reattached themselves to the stalk in a way that resembled a bud waiting to bloom. "Teacher, you've also become a supernatural being," the students said in elation. Wang Fugui took out the pistol Ren Xiaosu gave him a long time ago. He looked at the pistol, then at the crowd who was fleeing. He was caught in a dilemma. Ren Xiaosu snapped at him, "It has nothing to do with guns or killing others. It happened purely because her willpower has reached a transition point." "Then can I reach my transition point as well?" Wang Fugui said with anticipation. Seeing how Wang Delong kept doubting his family bloodline, Wang Fugui was really eager to prove himself. Ren Xiaosu was tickled pink by Wang Fugui. "Don't think about all that irrelevant stuff. It's not like everyone can become a supernatural being. Even if you're not one, you can still live a good life." At this moment, the escapees group was keeping the distance in fear that Ren Xiaosu would seek him out to settle the score. It wasn't until this moment that they understood that the moral coercion and societal pressure that were effective in the stronghold were no longer effective here. These were the wastelands, not the stronghold. In the past, they believed that as long as they had more people on their side, and as long as they dared to kick up a fuss, they could definitely get things their way. They believed that as long as they had the moral high ground, others would have to yield to them. But that was not the case out here in the wilderness, and Ren Xiaosu had fired a shot to make them learn. Now that everyone was awake, Ren Xiaosu decided to gut the rabbit and roast it for everybody to have a taste of meat. Some time ago, Xiaoyu discovered that meat sold in the stronghold was extremely expensive after first arriving there. Even imitation meat, was extremely expensive too. So they ended up having less meat to eat than before while living in the stronghold. Since Ren Xiaosu knew how to hunt, he caught more wild animals in the wilderness to make up for the lack of meat in the diet. In the earlier years, Ren Xiaosu's hunting targets were limited by his physical fitness and skills even if he knew how to hunt. But now, he was no longer constrained to just hunting for sparrows. As the fatty meat of the plump rabbit roasted over the fire, Ren Xiaosu brought out some honey from his storage space. He made some cuts on the rabbit and applied honey to it. Very quickly, fats from the meat started dripping down bit by bit into the campfire. The sight of this made the students on the other side salivate. But since Ren Xiaosu did not say they could eat it, they could only watch quietly as the rabbit cooked. During their escape, Jiangwu had been constantly reminding them that they would have to depend on themselves for everything and not rely on others for help. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "Y'all can come over and have some too." The students looked towards Jiangwu with anticipation. "Teacher, can we?" Jiangwu smiled and nodded. "Go ahead, but remember to give thanks." With just some barbecued meat, Ren Xiaosu managed to gain more than 40 gratitude tokens without much effort. Some students even thanked him several times in a single breath and were always sincere each time they said it. Ren Xiaosu thought these well-educated students were way too well-mannered. "Ha ha ha, eat up, eat up." The group of students surrounded the campfire in great anticipation. Ren Xiaosu saw them holding their knees together as they sat by the side and swallowed hard. When he saw the meat on the surface browning, he cut out a small piece of it for everyone to share. However, the students were all showing humility to each other and only cut a small piece from the shared portion for themselves before handing it to the next person. Ren Xiaosu felt Jiangwu had really taught them well. The aroma of the meat drifted towards the escapees when the wind blew. The escapees could only sit there in a daze in the snow and smell the aroma but not eat the meat. Not once had they thought about how if all of them worked together, they could easily catch some wild goats, wild pheasants, or wild ducks with the number of people they had. These creatures in the wilderness had multiplied to great numbers without any human interference. But the thought of gaining something for themselves through their own efforts had never crossed their minds. One of Jiangwu's students suddenly asked Ren Xiaosu while eating, "Can you please teach us how to hunt? Or how to use a gun? We would also like to rely on ourselves to find food so we can protect our teacher in the future." 1. Restructured steak is a catch-all term to describe a class of imitation beef steaks made from smaller pieces of beef fused together by a binding agent. Chapter 200. It wasn't my fault. Ren Xiaosu said with a smile, "Your teacher just wants y'all to study hard so you can work in research or similar fields in the future. Wouldn't that be better?" A student said, "But we can't always depend on others." Ren Xiaosu glanced at Jiangwu. "All right, I'll teach y'all tomorrow." "Thank you," the students said earnestly. With this wave of thanks, he received another 20-odd gratitude tokens. Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt that his decision to bring these students along was one of the wisest decisions he had ever made. Meanwhile, someone among the escapees asked in a soft voice, "Why don't we go and apologize to them?" "How would that help?" someone wondered. A middle-aged woman said, "If so many of us apologize to him, what more could he ask for?" But in the end, still no one dared to say anything to Ren Xiaosu and company. They did not even have the courage to apologize. However, the other escapees who were not involved in the attempts to take the rabbit for their own also kept a distance from the group that did. They feared they would end up becoming collateral damage if those people got punished later. But only a minority of the escapees were not involved, and they probably only made up 20% of the entire group. At that time, they maintained their rationality and stuck to their morals. As it turned out, they were right. Although Ren Xiaosu had killed the perpetrators, he was still a little angry about the incident. In the middle of the night, he was still thinking about whether he should open up some shadow doors and drop snowballs over the campfires of those escapees to extinguish them. However, the person whose fundamental values were rocked most was actually not Jiangwu and her students, but Chen Wudi. While divvying up the meat, Chen Wudi kept hold of a small stick as he sat on the edge of the campfire. When Ren Xiaosu handed him some meat, he asked, "What's the matter?" Chen Wudi thought for a little and said, "That group of people felt like a cloud of darkness trying to devour me." The long-awaited palace finally spoke at this time. Quest helped Chen Wudi stabilize his mental state. In fact, even if the palace did not say anything, Ren Xiaosu would still do it. However, the palace probably also recognized Chen Wudi's current state of mind and did not want him to be defeated by reality. Therefore, it assigned Ren Xiaosu a quest to help him. But wasn't there something wrong with how the palace had phrased its words? By stabilizing his mental state, did it mean that it did not wish for Chen Wudi to get better? Ren Xiaosu thought for a long while before saying, humans are always being attacked by reality and the ugliness of their own species. Everyone will slowly begin to think that everything is meaningless. When that happens, they try to seek the light in the dark. Chen Wudi was somewhat confused. Master, what's wrong with this world? This time, Ren Xiaosu said in a serious tone, but, Wudi, try to think about it differently. If you constantly feel that you're devoured by the darkness, wouldn't it mean that you are that light? Chen Wudi's eyes lit up. Is that true, Master? Yes. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength. Currently, Ren Xiaosu's physical attributes reached 9.5 strength and 6.1 dexterity. He was still unable to accurately gauge how strong his punches were, but it became an even more terrifying power when they were amplified through his shadow clone. However, Ren Xiaosu did not wish to gain any further strength right now. He preferred having a few basic skill duplication scrolls so he could learn other people's cycling. When the sky turned bright, Ren Xiaosu's group quickly packed up and prepared to set off. They had followed the large group of escapees because they were afraid of the wolves. But now that Ren Xiaosu realized the wolves were not going to attack them, he decided to speed up the journey. The earlier they could locate a new human settlement, the easier it would be for them to determine which direction Stronghold 88 was and readjust their route. Ren Xiaosu did not intend to enter a new stronghold yet. He only wanted to ask around for directions in the town outside the stronghold so they could avoid getting into any conflict with the authority of the stronghold. After all, there were a few too many supernatural beings in the group, so it was inevitable that the stronghold overseer would regard them as enemies. It was only they who had eaten meat for their meals and had blankets to cover themselves with on this escape so far. The other escapees did not have such comforts at all. Some of the escapees even had to resort to eating ice to quench their thirst. In the morning, a minority of the escapees' faces were flushed and their temperatures went up. In their current condition, they most probably would not get up anymore. Ren Xiaosu knew that even the cleanest-looking snow in the wilderness had to be boiled for at least 15 minutes before it was safe for drinking. Bacteria is one of the most deadly things in the wilderness. Just because they could not be seen, some people would ignore their existence. A man whose face was flushed stood in front of Ren Xiaosu's group and blocked them from leaving. He begged, since you're all so well prepared, you must have brought along some medicine like antibiotics or something, right? Please, give me some of it. Otherwise, I definitely won't survive for much longer. Ren Xiaosu looked at Yan Luyuan. Then Yan Luyuan said, he was one of the troublemakers. With that, Ren Xiaosu ignored the man and left him pleading behind them. The man realized Jiangwu would be kinder, so he turned to her and begged for help. However, Jiangwu was no longer the young and naive teacher. She said to her students, let's hurry up and keep pace with the group. Remember this person, he tried to rob us of our things yesterday. Along the way, Ren Xiaosu taught some wilderness survival techniques to the rest of the group. He said in a loud voice, right now, it's not the season for harvesting wild berries. But when you do encounter them, remember that 90% of the purple, blue, and black berries are edible, while 50% of the red, green, and yellow berries are edible. So if you're extremely hungry, it's better to find the purple, blue, and black berries to eat first. While the students rode on their bicycles, they felt that even though this young man was being ferried on the back of a bicycle, his back had become larger than life. A little kid among the escapees shouted to an old lady next to him, Grandma, I want to ride on a bike too. Get a bike for me. His grandmother, who had still been ordering people around, was stumped by her grandson's request. Her grandson shook off her hand and started crying, You're not a good grandma. I want my mommy and daddy. When the other escapees walked past them, nobody cared about what was happening. No one had any sympathy for them, nor were they going to offer any help. Along the frontier in the heavy snow, Zhu Xianchu was slowly advancing against a violent blizzard with a black cauldron floating in front of him. The snow was so deep that it had already come up to his waist. If it weren't for his shadow clone carrying him, he probably wouldn't have walked any further. Suddenly, a dozen odd people camouflaged in white cloth got up out of the snow. While pointing the guns at the big black cauldron, one of them shouted into the wind, "With the 3rd Combat Brigade of Stronghold 178. State your name and purpose." When Zhu Xianchu heard the words, "Stronghold 178, he couldn't be more overjoyed. He shouted, "I'm Zhu Xianchu from Stronghold 113. I have a recommendation letter from Zhang Jinglan." The soldiers were stunned when they heard Zhang Jinglan's name. As they cautiously approached Zhu Xianchu, one of them went over to take the letter from him while the others stood by for further instructions. The guns were still pointed at Zhu Xianchu's figure. It was just that the black cauldron and shadow clone felt a little strange to them. "Brother, you're a supernatural being, right? Why do you have 2 types of superpowers?" The soldiers from the observation post buried under the snow seemed to understand supernatural beings very well. Zhu Xianchu was stunned by that question. "I'm not sure either, but can't I have 2 superpowers?" The person who questioned him read the letter and said to the person next to him, "It's really Commander Zhang's handwriting. The secret code in the letter is also correct." Everyone nodded. "Brother, come with us." They then led him toward Stronghold 178 in the distance. Currently, the walls of Stronghold 178 were white. It looked like it was encased within a wall of solid ice, giving it a sense of time-worn dilapidation. But it still looked exceptionally magnificent nonetheless. While they walked against the blizzard, someone asked, "Brother, did you come from Stronghold 113? That place is so far away." Zhu Xianchu shouted into the wind, "I came out of Stronghold 113 and went to Stronghold 112. Then I was forced to go to Stronghold 109 before finally heading here." The person next to him was stunned. "Brother, those strongholds you've been to are all gone now." Everyone around Zhu Xianchu stopped in their tracks. It seemed like they were seriously considering whether they should still take him to Stronghold 178. Zhu Xianchu hesitated for a while before saying, "It wasn't my fault." Creator's thought. Dear readers, regarding the east-west gate matters that affected which direction the experimentals would attack from. Stronghold 113 is in the northeast of Stronghold 109. Experimentals attacked from the east gate. Ren Xiaosu's family moved from the east to the west of the stronghold. Li Shenton wreaked havoc in the western district. The wrong directions have been rectified. Chapter 201 Escapees form cliques. By evening, it stopped snowing. As far as could be seen, there was snow everywhere in front of them. It felt like they had ventured out into another world. A large field mouse crawled out of the ground and scurried through the snow, looking for food. It could smell the grains while it was still in its burrow. During winter, the animal's fur had grown much denser and made this field mouse look just like a furball. However, before it could scurry far from its burrow, Ren Xiaosu, who was hiding in the snow behind it, suddenly pounced. Having been lying in the snow for a long time, the snow that fell on him had concealed the outline of his body and his breathing. The plump field mouse was so shocked it instantly puffed up its fur. But it was too late for it to get back to its burrow. Nowadays, field mice in the wilderness were extremely quick. If it were the average person, it would be impossible for them to catch it. However, a dagger came stabbing at the field mouse as though it knew beforehand where it was going, pinning the field mouse dead to the ground on the path leading back to its burrow. Cheers broke out in the distance. Jiang Wu and her students were rubbing their hands in the cold weather and cheering with joy. They were going to have meat for dinner again tonight. Ren Xiaosu walked over holding the field mouse by its leg. It takes patience to hunt in the wilderness. The wild animals these days have become smarter. They won't fall for it if you just place some bait out there. If you do not have more patience than them, you'll end up going hungry. It had just stopped snowing, but Ren Xiaosu had lain in the snow for several hours. Although he and Chen Woody could go out to hunt for wild boars instead, that would not be a suitable hunting method to teach these students. Ren Xiaosu's main purpose was still to teach and earn the gratitude tokens. After Ren Xiaosu finished sharing his experience, the students quickly thanked him with smiles on their faces. In just the short span of a day, Ren Xiaosu had gained more than 400 gratitude tokens by relying on the idolatry of these students. He had always been trying his best to gain as many gratitude tokens as he could ever since he was assigned the side quest. In the end, Ren Xiaosu discovered that students were still the more gullible ones. Ren Xiaosu had been worried that Jiang Wu had brought along too many students and it would delay their escape. But now he felt she had brought along too few students, resulting in him unable to earn more gratitude tokens at a faster rate. Ren Xiaosu would patiently go out and teach the students how to hunt, set up traps, and raid squirrel nests every day. With everyone so well fed during the escape, they looked much healthier, with rosy glows on their faces. As he led the students back to their campsite, he said, "If you manage to find a squirrel nest during winter, it's a really great harvest. It's filled with all kinds of food that the squirrel has stockpiled for winter, so it'll definitely be enough to last you several meals at least. Furthermore, there isn't any worry of being poisoned by food that a squirrel would eat." One of the students asked, "If we clear out the squirrel's food, how is the squirrel supposed to survive through the winter?" Ren Xiaosu comforted, "If you just eat the squirrel as well, it won't have to survive through the winter." When the students heard that, it made sense to them. When Jiang Wu, who was slowly following them, heard how Ren Xiaosu was teaching her students, she was a little conflicted. At the campsite, Yan Luyuan and company had already set up a campfire. Meanwhile, the students were carrying more firewood over. With the fire able to burn for longer, they wouldn't have to feel so cold tonight. The large group of escapees set up the campsite not far away. Now the escapees just followed Ren Xiaosu's group wherever they went. However, they did not dare approach them. But compared to the initial number of escapees who had escaped from the stronghold, only slightly less than half of them was still able to keep up with Ren Xiaosu's group. Xiaoyu took the dagger from Ren Xiaosu and skillfully prepared the field mouse meat. After that, she cleaned off the blood on her hands with some snow. Yan Luyuan whispered to Ren Xiaosu, "The escapees have already started forming cliques. Just today, I discovered some people ordering others to do their work for them while they enjoyed the fruits of their labor." Ren Xiaosu grunted as he sat at the edge of the campfire and tried to make the fire burn stronger by prodding it with a stick. He added some pine twigs to the fire and heard them crackle. He said, "Ignore them. Such things can't be avoided. At the beginning of an escape, everyone will constantly be on the run. But soon after, some of the smarter and more ruthless people will start making use of others. Such is human nature. In the past, they could live a proper life inside the stronghold by just following the rules and working daily. There were also many types of entertainment outlets for them to spend their money on. Although they worked, they couldn't save much money. They would just repeat their lives day in, day out and have no time to think about other things," Ren Xiaosu continued. "But once they come out into the wilderness, they understand what this world is really like." Then Ren Xiaosu sighed. "Those strongholds are like a world that the organizations have carefully designed for the residents." Right at this moment, a fracas broke out in the escapees group. Ren Xiaosu looked up and was surprised to see a few of the men attempting to catch a lone escapee. That escapee broke free from the grasp and ran over to Ren Xiaosu's group. "Bro, what should we do?" Yan Luyuan asked. "Let's wait and see how it turns out." Ren Xiaosu took the field mouse meat and roasted it over the fire. The men ran over as they chased down the escapee. But halfway through, they came to a halt when they saw Ren Xiaosu, who was sitting next to the campfire. The escapee had concealed herself very well. Although the people behind her had already stopped in their tracks, she continued running and stumbling around in the snow. Finally, she fell into the snow not far from Ren Xiaosu's group and stopped moving. That escapee seemed to think that Ren Xiaosu's group would get alarmed by the disturbance, and someone would go over to help her up. But as it turned out, she ended up lying there for over an hour. After some time, Chen Wudi, who was sitting at the edge of the campfire, couldn't help but say, "Master, someone's over there." "Don't worry, she's just sleepy. Let her sleep for a while and don't disturb her," Ren Xiaosu said with a smile. The others might not know, but he could sense that the person lying in the snow had an irregular breathing rhythm. An unconscious person wouldn't breathe that way. Furthermore, she even surreptitiously adjusted her posture just now when she apparently felt a little bit uncomfortable in that position. A moment later, the person lying in the snow slowly got back up. She acted as though she had just regained consciousness. Then she removed the scarf on her head to reveal a beautiful face. Yan Luyuan whispered, "It's a woman." That woman stared blankly at Ren Xiaosu and the others. "Oh, how did I pass out here? Hello, I'm Fang Yujing." Ren Xiaosu glanced at her. "Since you've regained consciousness, please go back to your side." He was really not interested in a scheming person like her. Although she was beautiful, she was still not the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "Don't you guys know who I am?" Fang Yujing was stunned. Everyone in Ren Xiaosu's group speechlessly looked at each other next to the campfire. Ren Xiaosu said, "You might not believe it when I say this, but we really don't know who you are." Chapter 202 The Li Consortium's Army. While Ren Xiaosu was still at Stronghold 109, he had heard of Fang Yujing and Cicada's names on a streetcar. At the time, he wondered if the celebrities of this stronghold were also members of the saboteurs based on the situation with Luo Xinyu. But later on, he felt that he was wrong to think that way. When the great disaster struck Stronghold 109, Luo Xinyu and Lu Yuan had specially waited for Yang Xiaojun in the wilderness for some time. However, no one else was in the vehicle. If these two celebrities were also members of the saboteurs, they would have been taken by them back then. Moreover, if Fang Yujing were a member of the saboteurs, she would not need to approach him in such a manner. It would be just as how Luo Xinyu had greeted Ren Xiaosu openly after discovering he was her neighbor. Right now, it seemed like the escapees who had started forming cliques had somehow learned of Fang Yujing's identity and wanted to get their hands on her. As a result, she approached Ren Xiaosu's group in a roundabout way to get his help. No matter whether his deduction was right or wrong, Ren Xiaosu did not actually intend to bother with Fang Yujing's plight. If someone made immoral advances on the celebrity again after she went back, Chen Wudi would naturally give them a thrashing. By this point, Ren Xiaosu fully entrusted Chen Wudi with doing all the good deeds. However, Ren Xiaosu still reminded Chen Wudi over and over to try his best not to reveal his superpower. He also told this to Jiang Wu as well. When Jiang Wu awakened her power yesterday, no one noticed since the escapees were busy fleeing in panic. Therefore, they were just a group of normal people with guns in the eyes of the other escapees. This way, they would not attract any special attention from the corporations when they reached the next stronghold together. This was also the reason why Ren Xiaosu would rather use a gun instead of depending on his powers last night. After all, most of the organizations were not really friendly towards supernatural beings nowadays. Then the faint rumbling of vehicles came from ahead of them. Ren Xiaosu looked up at the sound and was surprised to see a convoy of vehicles approaching them. On the sides of the vehicles, the logo of the Li Consortium's white spider could be seen. In reality, it wasn't exactly a white spider. It was just a logo in the shape of a nanomachine that resembled a spider drawn with well-defined edges. Ren Xiaosu frowned. The last thing he wanted to see now was the Li Consortium's people. Hundreds of military transport trucks slowly came to a stop in front of the escapees, and all of their tires were fitted with snow chains. A dozen or so combat platoons jumped out of the vehicles and slowly approached the group. The escapees were crying and shouting for help like their saviors had arrived. It was as though they had finally met their family members again. The officer commanding the platoons asked coldly, "Where have you all come from?" With tears streaming down his face, an escapee said, "Sir, we're residents of Stronghold 109. We escaped from there." Another escapee said in elation, "Didn't I say? The rescue troops would definitely find us. The Li Consortium hasn't forgotten about us. Sir, do you have any food? We're on the verge of starving to death." But the officer sneered, "I'm not here to save you all. We've been ordered to come to Stronghold 109 to annihilate the invaders. We were instructed to send everyone back to town at Stronghold 108. We aren't responsible for providing any meals to you." The escapees were taken aback. "Aren't you going to give us any aid?" The officer looked at the escapees and told the adjutant next to him, "Do a head count of the escapees." These armed troops of the consortium quickly did a head count of everyone. But during the process, the guns remained pointed at the escapees to prevent them from rioting. When the escapees who had been thinking of protesting against being treated like this saw the guns, they suddenly became as obedient as quails and did not dare say anything more. When everyone saw the army arriving, they were overjoyed, like they had been reunited with their family members. But now they realized these people did not even care about them. Someone finally could not hold back anymore. A young man walked to the front of the crowd and said, "My brother-in-law is a supervisor at Stronghold 108's Public Order Division. Kind sirs, please take me back with you. My brother-in-law will definitely reward all of you handsomely." The officer said with a smile, "All civilians are strictly forbidden to pass through the strongholds now. Even if you all came back with us, you wouldn't be allowed to enter the stronghold. So it's better not to speak all those empty words. I hope you can recognize the situation you're in. You're all refugees from now on and no longer residents of a stronghold." Moreover, claiming that a lowly supervisor at the Public Order Division could reward those of us from the Lee Consortium's army, isn't that too much of a brag? When Ren Xiaosu heard this, he realized the Lee Consortium had probably decided to implement stricter controls on people passing through the stronghold after the lesson at Stronghold 109. This was to prevent any further dangerous elements from getting into their strongholds. However, this was exactly what Ren Xiaosu wanted, as he did not intend to enter a stronghold that was controlled by the Lee Consortium. Who knew what kind of dangerous plans Li Shenton was up to? From the conversation, Ren Xiaosu could tell that soldiers who were under the direct jurisdiction of the Lee Consortium had never thought much of the stronghold's management. This alone was enough to show just how important the army was to the entire consortium. A man wondered, "Then what should we do when we go back? Are we only allowed to become refugees in town? We really are the stronghold's residents." The officer smiled. "You don't have to worry about having nowhere to go. Our Lee Consortium has already started a new round of conscription. All of those who are of suitable age will be required to join the military. Who knows, some of you might end up working under me in the future. As for the women, they'll be sent to the factories to make military uniforms for the new recruits. Since it's wartime, there's no need for me to explain anything to you people." Ren Xiaosu frowned. The Lee Consortium was actually planning to draft soldiers. Surely he wasn't fucking going to get conscripted, right? After the stronghold had been destroyed, the Lee Consortium had lost an entire stronghold of combat troops. In order to face an increasingly dangerous world, it would only be natural for them to recruit more soldiers. Moreover, several organizations were responsible for the destruction of Stronghold 109. If the Lee Consortium wanted to seek revenge, they had to first expand their military strength. However, Ren Xiaosu could never have expected that he would really get conscripted. "Bro, what should we do?" Yan Luyuan muttered. At this moment, the officer said to the adjutant, "Call the private troops and tell them we've located the escapees. Get them over here to escort the escapees back, and make sure to watch over them carefully." After a while, another dozen-odd military transport trucks arrived from behind them. Ren Xiaosu said, "There's nothing we can do now. Let's follow them to the town at Stronghold 108 first. We'll try to find a way to leave when there's a chance." At this moment, it was definitely not practical for them to force an escape from here. If Ren Xiaosu was by himself, he could just leave as he wished. But if he were to go, what would become of Yan Luyuan and the others? The men and women boarded separate vehicles with the private army soldiers pointing their automatic rifles at them and keeping a close watch. It was as though they were afraid they would try to escape. Before they went their separate ways, Ren Xiaosu looked at Jiangwu and said, "It's your turn now to protect Xiaoyu while I protect the male students on my side. I'll leave the rest to y'all to watch out for your own safety." Jiangwu looked at him and said in a serious tone, "I will. You be careful as well." After that conversation, Ren Xiaosu, Yan Luyuan, Chen Wudi, and all the men boarded one of the trucks, while Xiaoyu, Jiangwu, and the women boarded another. Chapter 203 Exemption from Military Service. As the military transport truck rumbled along noisily, a cold, piercing wind blew through the exposed cargo bed, the knife wind cutting the passengers' faces. At the beginning, what worried Ren Xiaosu the most was that these military transport trucks would transport the men and women to separate places, with the women being directly transported to the factory to work as female workers. However, that situation did not happen, and it allowed him to let out a temporary sigh of relief. Wang Fugui said with a frown, "We couldn't bring our bicycles with us." The moment he said that, Ren Xiaosu's face turned gloomy. This was probably the first time the group had suffered such a significant loss since leaving Stronghold 113. This was the Wasteland. All belongings were but worldly possessions, where things got discarded at a whim. If that saying applied to human lives, it was even more so for bicycles. In the current situation, even though Ren Xiaosu and Chen Wudi were both supernatural beings, it would still be extremely difficult for them to take on an entire unit. Watching the Li Consortium's troops heading towards Stronghold 109, Ren Xiaosu felt that he might not see them anymore in the future. That was because he did not think those troops were a match for over 1,000 experimentals in urban warfare. Unless, of course, the Li Consortium resorted to using heavy weaponry to flatten the stronghold. But a stronghold was built precisely for the resources around it. Would the Li Consortium be willing to completely give up on an entire stronghold just like that? They definitely would not. The price to pay was simply too great if they had to blow up an entire stronghold and rebuild it from scratch. The trucks drove through the snow for 7 to 8 hours straight. During this period, some of the trucks in the convoy broke down several times. It was only at such times that the people in the trucks were allowed to get out to stretch and relieve themselves. The private troops kept an eye on the escapees as though they were supervising prisoners. Ren Xiaosu exchanged glances with Xiaoyu and Jiangwu from a distance, but they had no idea what the other party was trying to say. After the trucks were repaired, the convoy continued on with its journey. During this time, Wang Fugui was striking up conversations with the soldiers, which was what he was best at. In just a short while, he was on very familiar terms with the soldiers who were assigned to watch over them. When they got back into the truck, Wang Fugui whispered to Ren Xiaosu, "It seems that we're heading straight for the town outside Stronghold 108. I'm sure we all know what these soldiers are like. Once we get there, I'll see if I can get them to secretly exempt us from military and manual labor by offering them some money and antibiotics." The manual labor was referring to the female escapees getting recruited to work in the factories. With someone like Wang Fugui in the group, any news would not become too inaccessible for them. Ren Xiaosu and the others were not good at dealing with people, so Wang Fugui had to be the one to do. Ren Xiaosu asked in a whisper, "Did you ask them what the situation at the other Li Consortium strongholds is right now?" "I asked, and everything is fine for now," Wang Fugui replied. "However, they're on full alert now. The Li Consortium has announced to the world that they're on wartime alert. It seems like war will be breaking out soon. It looks like they're not only gonna be dealing with the experimentals this time." Ren Xiaosu sighed. If it were only about handling the problem of the experimentals, there wouldn't be a need to raise the alert across a dozen odd strongholds at once. But where did the Li Consortium find the confidence to start a war? Surely they didn't intend to rely on their nanomachines, right? Yang Xiaojun had mentioned that even though the research results that everyone had been trying to get their hands on did not get destroyed in time by the Li Consortium, they must have already transferred the research data through their own satellite network. So the Li Consortium's research was definitely not for nothing. At the time, Ren Xiaosu even raised some doubts regarding the matter. If that were the case, the portable hard drive was probably left behind on purpose. If the Yang Consortium decided to use it, it would be better for them to inspect it first. Otherwise, it might turn out to be a trap. Such was Ren Xiaosu's nature. While other people might not overthink things, he would be extra careful and alert as long as he felt there was something unusual. As of now, the best solution was for them to use money to get an exemption from having to serve in the military and perform manual labor. The soldiers were swearing in the truck at having to come out to work in such cold weather. They were quite similar to the private troops in Ren Xiaosu's memory. These troops were also very greedy and always thinking about money. In the truck, Wang Fugui quietly swapped the most valuable items to Ren Xiaosu so he could stuff them into his storage space. That would prevent the soldiers from getting any ideas in case they saw the valuable items they had. The escapees in the truck had ashen looks on their faces. They thought they would be rescued once the Li Consortium's troops arrived. No one expected it would turn out like this. Going from a stronghold resident to a refugee, they were rather unable to accept such a fall from grace. Just as they were about to arrive at the stronghold, the private army's convoy suddenly came to a halt. Then an officer who did not even bother wearing his beret properly said while tucking his thumbs in his belt, "Look, we also don't wish for all of you to suffer as soldiers or manual laborers, but it's not up to us since these orders came from above." An escapee begged, "Sir, I've got problems with my knee. I really can't be a soldier." A woman also begged, "We really don't know how to sew." We've never done anything like that before. With a smile, the officer of the private army said politely, "Don't worry, it'll be easy to pick up. However, I have another solution. I'm very familiar with Commander Lee, who's in charge of the draft. If any of you have any ideas, I can put in a word for you. But it's certainly not enough to just talk about it. Let me make this clear, I do not stand to gain anything from this. All I'm trying to do is to plead on everyone's behalf." Ren Xiaosu immediately knew that he was hinting at getting some bribes. Someone immediately took off his wristwatch. "Sir, this watch is a soaring bird. I just bought it last year." The officer immediately beamed and said, "Note his name. Is there anyone else who wants to be exempted from military or manual labor?" Wang Fugui immediately went over and pulled the officer aside. "Sir, my name is Wang Fugui. I've got a 100 antibiotics and 5 branded watches over here. However, there are quite a few of us who would like to get exempted." When the officer heard that he had a 100 antibiotics, his eyes popped out of their sockets. When he heard he was being offered 5 watches as well, his eyes shone brightly. Wang Fugui said softly, "The thing is, we have more than 20 students in our group. Just think about it, what are students capable of doing? They won't be able to contribute at all. Besides, students are the foundation of our future. Wouldn't it be such a waste for them to become soldiers or female workers?" The officer looked at Wang Fugui. The female students can be exempted but the male students can't. To be honest, the bottom line is that all men of the right age must be conscripted. If I dare to overstep this line, I'll get executed tomorrow. When Wang Fugui heard this, he started panicking. He couldn't care less about other people, but Ren Xiaosu definitely couldn't be conscripted. He pointed to Ren Xiaosu and said, "Didn't you just exempt someone from military service?" "To be honest with you, the person who was exempted is too old and not within the conscription requirements at all," the officer said with a smile. Old Wang could completely understand that manual labor could be exempted, but military service was unavoidable. The middle-aged man who handed over his watch had purely been taken for a sucker. He rephrased his words and said, "Look at that person over there. He might look young, but it's only because he has kept his face well maintained. I hope this won't make it sound like a joke, but he's actually my uncle." "Fuck," the officer was chuckled. "Old Wang, can you be any more shameless than this? No means no. With these antibiotics and watches, I can only exempt the girls from their manual labor. But the men are all of suitable age, so they won't be exempted from military service." Wang Fugui sighed. Wang Delong and Yan Luyuan did not have to be conscripted as they were too young. But based on the current situation, it was certain that Ren Xiaosu, Chen Wudi, and all 8 of Jiang Wu's male students would have no choice but to serve in the military. Chapter 204 Master, don't get too upset. Knowing the opportunity was hard to come by, Wang Fugui did not hesitate any further. He would have to handle the exemptions for Li Xiaoyu, Jiang Wu, and the rest of the female students from their manual labor first. He went back over to Ren Xiaosu and told him about it. Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and said, "It's already quite good that we can get an exemption from manual labor. You'll need to settle them in town after we get conscripted. If we decide to escape one day, it'll be easier for us to meet up when that time comes." Right now, only 10 people in the group were required to serve in the military. This consisted of Chen Wudi, Ren Xiaosu, and the 8 male students. The remaining people would be allowed to stay in town for the time being. Who could have everything go their way in a chaotic world like this? This was already a very good outcome. After the soldiers finished receiving their bribes, they continued on their journey. After an hour, they finally arrived at the outside of Stronghold 108. To Ren Xiaosu's surprise, the town outside the stronghold was much livelier than the other towns he had been to. Construction vehicles could be seen shuttling back and forth. There was even a huge military base station just outside the town. It seemed that the Li Consortium had already gathered a lot of its military forces outside Stronghold 108. Although it was early morning, it was extremely busy outside the stronghold. Ren Xiaosu was puzzled. Even if Stronghold 108 was the closest to Stronghold 109 where the experimentals now were, was it really necessary to gather so many troops here? When they got out of the vehicles, the officer in charge of escorting them immediately instructed those who had paid bribes to run into town via a narrow trail to avoid getting drafted into manual labor. The remaining people were made to stay there to await further instructions. The officer chuckled and said, "Let me introduce myself. My name is Li Qingzheng, and I'm going to bring you all over to the conscription office now for a physical examination. I'll secretly share some good news with you all. As long as you pass the test, you stand a chance of returning to the stronghold. In any case, I'm not that fortunate. But for you all, it's all up to your own luck." Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. Was this a normal physical? It could even decide whether a person would end up becoming a refugee or a stronghold resident. They followed Li Qingzheng and came to a large military tent. At this moment, a group of people happened to be coming out of the tent. One of them said excitedly, "I can get into the stronghold. I can go live in the stronghold." Li Qingzheng was watching that man's excitement with a grimace. What a lucky man. A refugee has been elevated in status just like that. He looked at Ren Xiaosu and the others while explaining, that person was previously a refugee from Stronghold 107's town. However, he's become a stronghold resident after being sent here and taking the physical. Interesting, right? Ren Xiaosu stood outside the tent and looked at that man from behind. He suddenly felt that this physical examination was likely to be related to the Li Consortium's new technology. Everyone stood in line and waited for their turn to enter the tents. Currently, the physical examination was being carried out in more than a dozen tents within the military base at the same time. Not only were there refugees undergoing the physical examination, but even the active servicemen of the Li Consortium were required to go through the physical examination again. Ren Xiaosu went into one of the tents. However, the physical examination being carried out on the inside was not what he had expected. There were only several people dressed in white coats standing in front of an apparatus. The person undergoing the physical examination was required to sit on a stool that was attached to the apparatus. He was also wearing a metallic ring that was connected to some wires on his head. A person in a white coat read the data and said, "Synchronization rate at 3%, fail." The staff member next to him dismissed the person who was undergoing the physical examination. "You did not pass." Ren Xiaosu slowly moved all the way to the back of the line. He kept having a feeling that something was off about this. Li Qingzheng chuckled, "What, don't you want to get back into the stronghold? I heard you used to be a stronghold resident." Ren Xiaosu glanced at him. "Aren't you a stronghold resident?" "No, I only became a platoon commander because the private army's strength increased. But I was also a refugee before," Li Qingzheng said with a smile. So it turned out that the Li Consortium was increasing its military strength all across the board. Even refugees were being recruited into the private army now. At this moment, one of the people in the white coats said, "Synchronization rate at 81%, pass. Record this person's details into the personnel database." Ren Xiaosu asked, "What does this synchronization rate mean?" "I'm not sure either," Li Qingzheng said. "Anyway, if you can pass the test, you'll be allowed into the stronghold. But if you fail it, you'll become one of my men." The man who passed the test was an escapee who had fled together with Ren Xiaosu's group from Stronghold 109. He asked the doctor in disbelief, "Am I allowed to enter the stronghold?" The doctor in the white coat glanced at him and said indifferently, "Congratulations. Your name?" "Ha ha ha, I can finally enter the stronghold," the escapee said excitedly. The doctor said impatiently, "Name, please." "Lin Qi. My name is Lin Qi," the escapee answered excitedly. Then someone took him away. One by one, the people in the group stepped forward for the physical examination. The synchronization rates of the 8 male students basically fell between 40% and 60%, but the passing requirement was apparently much higher than that. When it came to Chen Woody's turn, the doctor frowned. Synchronization rate at 1%. Why is it so low? But Chen Woody seemed unaffected by the result. When the doctor asked him to leave, he asked Ren Xiaosu in a whisper, "Master, why is my synchronization rate only at 1% and so much lower than theirs? It might be a test of whether your brain is functioning properly or not." Ren Xiaosu hesitated for a moment before replying. "It's only because there's something wrong with your brain that you scored 1%. At this moment, the doctor urged Ren Xiaosu to come forward for his turn. At one point in time, Ren Xiaosu felt that his synchronization rate would somehow turn out to be surprisingly high. But what if he got selected to enter the stronghold? He wasn't keen on entering the stronghold at all. When Ren Xiaosu placed the metallic ring over his head, he felt like there were some barely discernible strands of silk threads trying to communicate with his mind. They felt like a physical presence in his mind, but before those threads could connect with the palace, they started snapping in quick succession. A second later, the doctor opposite him said in a surprise, "Synchronization rate at 0%. How can that be?" Nearby, Chen Wudi said with a look of sarcasm, "Master, don't get too upset." Ha ha. Ren Xiaosu was confused. Was it because of the palace that his results were 0%? Then the doctor said, "Record it." Neuron interfacing was a complete failure. He called out to the person after Ren Xiaosu, "Next." If Ren Xiaosu had not said those words to Chen Wudi, he would definitely have been accepting of this result. But now, he found it really hard to swallow. Although he did not wish to pass this test, his score should at least be higher than Chen Wudi's, right? "Doctor," Ren Xiaosu said in a serious tone, "I think I can get a better result than that. There must be something wrong with the machine. How else could I have scored so low?" The doctor shot him a look. "Don't waste the stronghold's resources. Next." As Ren Xiaosu got dragged out of the tent by Li Qingzheng and the others, he kept shouting, "Doctor, please give me another chance." The doctor in the tent said coldly, "I've seen loads of people like that. It's going to be the same no matter how many times they get tested. What a bunch of good-for-nothings." However, when the next person sat down on the apparatus, the doctor froze. Why is there no reaction? It's not displaying any data at all. Could the machine be faulty? Someone asked softly. The doctor keyed in a 16-digit pin on the apparatus to unlock the refrigerated chamber in the middle where a bottle of silvery, liquid-like substance could be seen. The doctor puzzledly took another bottle of the liquid, and replaced the one in the chamber. The machine was immediately restored back to normal. He handed the bottle of liquid he took out of the machine to his assistant. "Send this back to the stronghold for checking. There might be some problems with this bottle of nanomachines." Chapter 205 The Outpost's new recruit, Ren Xiaosu. The synchronization test was being carried out across the entire Li Consortium. Not only were Ren Xiaosu and the others tested, but even the Li Consortium's own combat troops were also involved. Looking in from outside the tent, Ren Xiaosu watched as those soldiers lined up and entered the tent. Whenever someone passed the synchronization test and got selected, others would come forward to congratulate them. These troops from the Li Consortium should know exactly what they were being screened for. So seeing how they were all congratulating their comrades upon passing the test, it must be a matter that was extremely worth being happy about. "Monitor, what is this synchronization screening about?" a student asked. As they were all classmates, they continued addressing Ren Xiaosu as their class monitor, even calling him teacher sometimes. Ren Xiaosu did not hide it from them. He gave it some thought before sharing his assumption with them. The Li Consortium has made a breakthrough in nanorobotics and neurotechnology. It seems like they're selecting suitable candidates as hosts for the nanomachines. Indeed, the Li Consortium had immediately put the nanorobotics technology into military use after they saw a breakthrough in their research. If it were really as Luo Lan had said, nanomachines could help humans gain a stronger skeletal structure, muscles, and even achieve other improvements. At that time, the Li Consortium would probably try to build an elite unit that was assisted by nanomachines. However, Ren Xiaosu somehow felt that it would be extremely uncomfortable to have machines placed into his body. The officer named Li Qingzheng looked at Ren Xiaosu and the others with a smile. "Everyone, follow me. We'll go and handle the registration first. After that, you'll all be my men starting from today. Stick with me, and we will have good food and wine together." Ren Xiaosu looked at him. At present, Li Qingzheng still wore his beret crookedly, while his collar was also unbuttoned. It was like he was just some ruffian. No, he was exactly what a real ruffian would look like. Ren Xiaosu walked over and shook Li Qingzheng's hand. At the same time, he stuffed 2 banknotes into his hand and said, "Pleased to meet you, Platoon Commander Li." Seeing how Ren Xiaosu understood the rules, Li Qingzheng beamed. "Don't worry, everyone. I just become an officer, so let's not have any bureaucracy between us." Let's all be brothers from now on. With just 2 banknotes, their superior-subordinate relationship had now changed to a brotherly relationship. Ren Xiaosu asked, "Where are we heading now?" "Let's get all of your registrations completed first. Then we'll head to an outpost at the front after getting your uniforms. The entire outpost will be all ours," Li Qingzheng said in high spirits. Ren Xiaosu had some doubts about this. Wasn't Li Qingzheng just a platoon commander in the private troops? How could he possibly command an entire outpost? "Aren't we going to be carrying out our duties nearer to the stronghold?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "There are still some factories out there. We need to protect those factories from being attacked," Li Qingzheng explained. "We'll be fine. Y'all don't have to worry at all. I've been practicing martial arts with the blacksmiths in town since childhood. I'm proficient in many types of boxing now." When Ren Xiaosu heard that, he did not exactly feel better. It was fine that he had to serve in the private army, but how did he end up getting drafted into such a haphazardly assembled group of soldiers? Li Qingzheng looked at Ren Xiaosu and said, "Although you look a little skinny, have a really low synchronization rate, and don't look to be much of a soldier, you can rest assured that Big Brother Li here will protect you." "Thanks, Big Brother Li," Ren Xiaosu said. After his dexterity went up, he did look a little on the skinny side. The students beside him all looked at one another, not knowing what to say. To them, it looked more like Li Qingzheng's brains would get smashed out of his head with just a single punch from Ren Xiaosu. At this moment, 7 other escapees in the group were also required to perform military service. These escapees looked grief-stricken. They had thought that refugees were the most inferior humans in the world and were only born to serve the stronghold residents. But they could never have expected they would end up becoming refugees themselves one day. Since Ren Xiaosu was the one who paid the money, he was Li Qingzheng's brother. But these other escapees did not have any money on them to pay him with. Li Qingzheng looked at them with a different expression. "You people over there, hurry it up. Who are you trying to gain sympathy from with your crying? You'll feel better once we get to the outpost." Originally, Li Qingzheng only had about a dozen soldiers under him. But now he had finally gathered up to a total of 30 soldiers to make up a full platoon. Ren Xiaosu learned from Li Qingzheng that they were going to be serving under 8th Platoon, the Iron 2nd Battalion of the private army. At this moment, Li Qingzheng was still unaware of what kind of people had joined his unit. The group went and registered. When they were collecting their uniforms, the soldiers of the logistics division informed them there was a shortage of uniforms, and they would be issued at a later date. Ren Xiaosu wondered just how big of an expansion the military was undertaking that they could not even afford to issue them with uniforms. Were they going to guard the outpost in their current attire? Wasn't the conscription carried out too fucking hastily? Even though the stronghold had expanded the size of the private army, they did not give them any priority. When it was time for them to collect their weapons, they were not even issued with firearms. Along the way, he suddenly saw Yan Luyuan standing outside the military base. Neither of them spoke, and Yan Luyuan simply threw a note over the wooden fence. Ren Xiaosu opened it up and read, "We've settled down in town. Everything is fine." Ren Xiaosu could finally feel relieved. At this moment, Li Qingzheng shouted from a military transport truck not far away, "Brothers, get in. We're setting off to the outpost." Ren Xiaosu walked to the truck after giving a nod to Yan Luyuan. He was unsure of what kind of outpost he would be assigned to. The moment he figured out his situation, he would take Yan Luyuan and the others away. Meanwhile, the bottle of silvery, liquid-like nanomachines was being sent into the stronghold. A researcher draped in a white coat was standing in front of the stronghold's gate and having his ID checked. When the garrison guards saw his special identification papers, they immediately let him through. They even prepared an exclusive car for him to send him to Research Facility 613, located on the inside of the stronghold. As the researcher sat in the car, he thought about something. Since their nanorobotics technology had become mature, it would still be justifiable if only 1 or 2 of the nanomachines were defective. But for an entire bottle to be defective was a little strange. The number of nanomachines contained within this bottle of silvery liquid was simply astronomical. They couldn't possibly all be defective, right? Nanomachines were not exactly smaller than a nanometer. They would just have to ensure that their operating tentacles were in the range of nanoscale levels, with the individual body size of each nanomachine at approximately 4 nanometers. What is a nanometer? A nanometer is equivalent to 0.0000001 meters. If this entire bottle of nanomachines were defective, then it would definitely not be due to a technical issue but some other reason. He was extremely confused and also highly suspicious. When he arrived at Research Facility 613, he walked straight into the research building and said to the secretary, "I would like to see Mr. Lee." The pretty secretary adjusted her glasses. "If you have anything, just tell it to me. Mr. Lee is very busy. We've encountered a minor problem with this thing here." The researcher said, "Please let Mr. Lee know immediately. You can place it here with me and write down your contact information. I'll inform you when we get results." Multiple cases of defective nanomachines due to operational error have occurred across the various strongholds today. "Mr. Lee is busy handling all that right now," the pretty secretary said nonchalantly. The researcher was stunned. The nanomachines were damaged due to operational error. But why did he somehow feel that their situation here was different? He clearly remembered that there was no mistake in the way he operated the machine. He said in earnest, "I'll go back and wait for your news. But please make sure to explain to Mr. Lee that there was no operational error with our bottle of nanomachines. The circumstances surrounding its failure were extremely suspicious." The secretary gave him a look and then pasted an urgent label on that bottle of nanomachines right before his eyes. Only then did the researcher give a sigh of relief. "Thank you." But what he did not know was that there were already hundreds of bottles of samples labeled urgent that had been sent into the laboratory. Chapter 206 Middle of Nowhere. The military transport truck slowly drove through the vast wilderness towards a mountainous region. Here, the mountains were not very high. While the platoon sat in the back, Ren Xiaosu silently took note of the current position. This should be a place several dozen kilometers away from Stronghold 108. When they passed by several factories along the way, Li Qingzheng introduced the place to them. "These are the Li Consortium's oil refineries, and our outpost is just up front. Our daily responsibility will be to observe any signs of approaching enemies. If there are, we have to report it immediately through the satellite phone." Ren Xiaosu asked, "What do we do after reporting it?" This question stumped Li Qingzheng. The higher-ups had not mentioned what actions to take after reporting an intrusion. Were they supposed to defend the place until reinforcements arrived or should they retreat? It seemed like their task was just to keep watch and function as an early warning system. But Ren Xiaosu felt they would be risking their lives by keeping watch here. They were not issued with any uniforms or firearms. An entire platoon consisting of 30 people only had 11 automatic rifles and just over 20 magazines with them. What else could they be other than cannon fodder? However, Li Qingzheng was not too worried about that. Just think about it. A large contingent of soldiers from the combat troops have already been deployed to Stronghold 109. If there's any danger, they'll be the ones to handle it. What do we have to worry about? What if other organizations start a war? Ren Xiaosu asked. That won't happen. Li Qingzheng waved it off and said, "How can there still be wars in this era? I've never witnessed a real war since the day I was born." When Ren Xiaosu heard that, he did not say anything more. Even the refugees were used to living in these peaceful times. Everyone always thought that war was something very far away from them, and even Ren Xiaosu also had such thoughts. But Ren Xiaosu felt that something was not right. What if the Li Consortium initiated an attack on others? What if those frontline troops of the Li Consortium couldn't beat back the experimentals? If war was not coming, the Li Consortium would have no reason to mobilize so many troops. Moreover, the various organizations would also have spies planted inside the other strongholds. If the Li Consortium started ramping up its war preparations, that would make the other organizations nervous as well. It was like they were all tied together by a single rope. If someone pulled too hard, it would tighten around the others. Once the rope snapped, war would break out. "We've arrived," Li Qingzheng shouted excitedly, "this will be our outpost from now on." When Ren Xiaosu jumped out of the truck, he was stunned after looking around at the place. He could only see a row of small, one-story houses standing on the hilltop in front of him with a big mountain behind. This was the middle of nowhere. No one was in the outpost. It seemed like 8th Platoon of the Iron Second was going to have this outpost all to themselves. It was no wonder Li Qingzheng could speak so pompously back then. Li Qingzheng pointed at the top of the mountain as he stood on the flat ground of the outpost. Every day, 5 of you will be on sentry duty on a rotating basis in the watchtower up there where you'll check for any signs of the enemy. If a situation crops up, report it immediately to the higher-ups. Is that all? Ren Xiaosu asked. Right, there's nothing else. Li Qingzheng said with a smile, supplies will be delivered to us regularly, so we don't have to worry about anything at all. All we need to do is to keep a close eye on this direction. Who will come from this direction? Ren Xiaosu asked. How would I know? Li Qingzheng was amused. No one goes into those mountains, and neither will anyone come out from there. So we can all just rest assured that no one will attack us. Ren Xiaosu made a rough guess of the current position. They should be situated at one of the northernmost outposts in the area controlled by the Li Consortium. Which organizations were to the north? The Qing Consortium or the Yang Consortium? Ren Xiaosu asked him, do you know where Stronghold 88 is? Li Qingzheng was surprised. I don't know. Alright, Ren Xiaosu would just have to ask someone else when there was an opportunity. He should have asked Yang Xiaojun back then. After everyone unloaded the supplies from the military transport truck, Ren Xiaosu estimated their supplies would only last the 30 of them 7 days at most. He wondered if the subsequent resupply would be delivered on time. Seeing as the Li Consortium was busy on all fronts, who knew if they would forget about them over here? When Li Qingzheng saw Ren Xiaosu's expression, he said with a smile, Bro, I know you're all looking to leave this place. But in the current circumstances, even if you escape back to town, you might not be able to leave with the others. There are many military bases stationed all over town, and there's so many of you as well, so how are you going to leave? You all will probably get caught and interrogated before you can even step out of there. Ren Xiaosu realized that even though Li Qingzheng looked rather stupid, he was well aware of the situation. He clearly knew that Ren Xiaosu's mind was not present. Li Qingzheng added, I suggest you just stay here for now. If there's an opportunity in the future, I'll try to transfer you back to the town. Then you can get together more often with your relatives and friends. Ren Xiaosu knew Li Qingzheng was hinting at more money, but he still thanked him anyway. Okay, I'm counting on you then, Platoon Commander Li. Haha, no need to be polite. Li Qingzheng said with a smile, you can just stay at this outpost with no worries. If enemies really do come, I'll chase them away with my boxing. There's nothing for y'all to be afraid of. Li Qingzheng had also found out that Ren Xiaosu and his group used to be students from Stronghold 109 and that Ren Xiaosu was the class monitor of the group. To him, it was normal that a group of students would feel afraid coming to such a place. As a big brother, he had to comfort them a little. The students beside them did not say anything as they unloaded the supplies. They did not know what expression to make when they heard Li Qingzheng's words. Right at this moment, Li Qingzheng laughed, y'all don't have to do this work. Just let the Stronghold residents do it. Didn't they used to despise us refugees? It's time we let them experience the life of a refugee. The students looked at Ren Xiaosu, who said to Li Qingzheng with a smile, let's work together instead. Although he also did not really like the Stronghold residents, it was not enough to make him want to order the 7 escapees around. Li Qingzheng said with a smile beside him, you students are really kind, but it's a shame you didn't pass the synchronization test. I heard that those who passed the test will become true elite troopers who can fight against a 100 opponents. Ren Xiaosu was still skeptical about the idea of one person fighting against a 100. To be honest, he had his own path to follow. So he was not envious of those who had passed the test. The only problem was that he felt a little uncomfortable when he saw the compassionate look in Chen Wudi's eyes. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu looked up and saw the majestic Wolf King standing on the summit of a mountain and watching him quietly. He was shocked to realize the wolves were still following him. When the Wolf King saw that Ren Xiaosu had noticed it, it did not avoid his eyes. After a while, it disappeared into the mountains. Li Qingzheng followed Ren Xiaosu's gaze and looked at the mountain as well, but he saw nothing there. What are you looking at? Ren Xiaosu smiled, just enjoying the scenery. Suddenly, wolves howled. Everyone jumped up in shock. Li Qingzheng said in panic, there's actually wolves in those mountains. But Ren Xiaosu did not feel any fear this time. Chapter 207 Birth of the Lord of Wolves. The howling of wolves seemed to have struck some fear into the recruits at the outpost. A soldier asked, "Platoon commander, what should we do? Why don't we run away?" Li Qingzheng was in a dilemma. "But we'll become deserters if we run away now. It's better than getting eaten by the wolves." An escapee said, "You haven't seen how huge those things are, but we encountered them when we were escaping. They're even bigger than bison." "Are you serious?" Li Qingzheng had not seen any wolves in a long time. When he heard about how big the wolves were, he couldn't help feeling a little nervous. But as the platoon commander, he had to reassure everyone. "Don't be afraid. I did not train in martial arts for nothing. Besides, aren't we also equipped with guns?" When the escapees heard the word, guns, they suddenly remembered that Ren Xiaosu and his group also had guns on them while fleeing from Stronghold 109. Moreover, the group was extremely intimidating at that time too. Just as they were about to say something, they noticed Ren Xiaosu staring at them with an ambiguous smile. The escapees realized if they snitched on him, they would have nowhere to escape to. So they held back from speaking. Furthermore, Li Qingzheng obviously disliked them as they used to be stronghold residents, so there were also no obligation for them to remind him. For some reason, the escapees suddenly did not feel so scared anymore when they realized they were in the same outpost as Ren Xiaosu's group. Eventually, Li Qingzheng and his original batch of soldiers were the only ones who were still afraid. Li Qingzheng and his men held the guns for a long time and waited, but the wolves did not show up. He slowly felt more at ease and said, "Let's clean up the place first. I think those wolves are also afraid of us since we have more people and guns as well, so they don't dare to come here." It looked like the outpost had been abandoned for a very long time. The pots and pans inside were all covered with a thick layer of dust. It would require a great deal of effort for them to clean up the place if they wanted to live in it. The escapees did their chores in a trance. Li Qingzheng's attitude towards them made them feel inferior to refugees. It felt like they had become the lowest class of humanity in this world. Ren Xiaosu had no sympathy for them, but he would not deliberately ostracize them either. The escapees knew he was a ruthless person, and they subconsciously wanted to get on better terms with him. Since Li Qingzheng did not like them, they would have to find another backer somehow. Everyone was harboring their own thoughts in this small outpost out here. Only the students were busy working with great enthusiasm and performing their tasks with great efficiency. Li Qingzheng was still a little unsettled because of the howling from the wolves. He kept considering whether he should call the private army's headquarters to ask for reinforcements. But when he finally made the call, he did not receive any help he was expecting even after being ridiculed by them. The person on the other end of the line also warned him not to make false reports of the enemy. Otherwise, they would court-martial him. When Li Qingzheng saw Ren Xiaosu continue cleaning with the students like nothing had happened, he asked, "Aren't you all scared?" Ren Xiaosu hesitated for a moment before saying, "Oh yes, I'm so scared." The students nodded quickly in unison. "Yeah, we're really scared." Li Qingzheng felt that Ren Xiaosu and the students were just mollifying him. In reality, Ren Xiaosu had already told the students in private while they were escaping that the wolves would not attack them. Although the students did not know why Ren Xiaosu said that, Ren Xiaosu was proven right. Since Ren Xiaosu was not worried, what was there for them to be worried about? Ren Xiaosu asked Li Qingzheng, "Platoon commander, why did you choose to be a soldier?" "For the pay, of course." Li Qingzheng explained, "If I were rich, who would be willing to come to this godforsaken place and be a soldier? Have you heard yet? The Pyro Company is offering to buy the blood of supernatural beings. You can get 1 million yuan in exchange for a drop of blood. If I were a supernatural being, I would sell my blood every day until the Pyro Company goes bankrupt." Ren Xiaosu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Who in the right mind would risk selling their blood just to earn some money after becoming a supernatural being? After cleaning up the place, everyone stared at each other blankly, as they were unsure of what to do next. But in actual fact, this was just how it was in a remote outpost like this. Boredom was simply a part of the daily lives. At this moment, Li Qingzheng let out a sigh and said, "To be honest, it's such a pity for you stronghold students to come here to be sentries. With all the knowledge that you have, there's nowhere you can apply it to. You'll have studied for over a decade for nothing." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. He had heard from Jiang Wu before that she hoped the students could further their studies in the future, and that these children were all fine saplings who studied very hard and were also very smart. He looked at the remaining 8 students and suddenly said, I have some textbooks with me. Starting from today, y'all can study by yourselves whenever you have free time. If there's a chance, I'll buy some advanced textbooks from town for y'all. Even though we're now in a place like this, you can't fall behind in your studies. The students were stunned. We're going to self-study here. They were more interested in learning how to hunt, how to protect themselves, and how to protect others now, rather than continue their education. After experiencing the cruelty of this world, the students' thoughts on education had started to waver. Sometimes, they would wonder if education was even useful at all. Ren Xiaosu explained patiently, I'm your class monitor. Back then, the student counselor said that it's the duty of the monitor to ensure that everyone studies hard. The students could not find any words to refute him with. Then Ren Xiaosu continued, in life, your friends might betray you one day, or your lover could betray you, but math, physics, and chemistry will not. The students were dumbfounded. What kind of nonsensical crap was that? Ren Xiaosu whispered to them a promise. Study hard, and I'll take y'all to the mountains to practice shooting firearms tomorrow. This time, the students broke out with smiles. Looking at these students, Ren Xiaosu got the thought that the Yang Consortium was probably also making use of this time to research the nanomachines. If there were no repercussions from its usage, it might be a good idea to give these students some self-protection abilities using the nanomachines. The next morning, Ren Xiaosu was still sleeping in the house when he heard Li Qingzheng shout from outside, quick, come out and have a look. Ren Xiaosu put on his clothes and went outside to have a look. He saw a goat lying at the door of one of the houses in the outpost. He also noticed some packed snow in front of the door where a neat row of large wolf prints could be seen. Ren Xiaosu immediately looked around and saw the Wolf King up on the summit of the mountain again. When it saw Ren Xiaosu looking over, it turned around and disappeared into the wilderness. It was as though it had stood there just to greet him. This goat was as large as a domesticated cow, and it would probably take several days for everyone at the outpost to finish eating it. Even though there were some changes to domesticated animals nowadays, they were not as great as the changes seen in the wild. The wolves must have hunted this goat in the mountains. While Ren Xiaosu was thinking about that, Li Qingzheng was belly laughing. I never expected the wolves would offer tribute and bow down before me after I arrived at this mountain. Don't address me as Platoon Commander Li anymore. Call me the Lord of Wolves instead. Ren Xiaosu's eyes twitched. This fellow was too good at elevating his own status. Off to the side, Chen Wudi was wondering if he should beat up Li Qingzheng since the title, Lord of Wolves, sounded like a demon name. Chapter 208 Don't Believe in Superstitions. Platoon Commander, what should we do with the goat? Someone asked. Li Qingzheng cut in, don't address me as Platoon Commander, call me the Lord of Wolves. What is the name of the mountain we're at? Oh yes, it's Mount Kun. I shall be known as the Lord of Wolves of Mount Kun from now on. Off to the side, Chen Wudi asked, Master, should I subdue this demon? Not for now, no, Ren Xiaosu replied. Chen Wudi understood that Ren Xiaosu meant that Li Qingzheng might have to be subdued at some later point. Master, when can we eat some goat? He slurped. How about now? When Ren Xiaosu heard Chen Wudi slurping, his expression nearly turned dark. As the group prepared to cut the goat up and make the campfire, the male student named Wang Yuqi looked at Ren Xiaosu curiously. He lowered his voice and asked, Monitor, when the wolves last appeared, you brought back such a large rabbit so quickly in the heavy snow. When the wolves appeared this time, they took the initiative and gave us a goat. Isn't that too much of a coincidence? Chen Wudi and the students all looked at Ren Xiaosu. Wang Yuqi had spoken quietly enough that only the group heard it. Ren Xiaosu could only look at them and say with a laugh, ha ha, it truly is a coincidence. Since the situation had come to this, he could only claim it was a coincidence. Wang Yuqi wondered, Monitor, did the wolves present you with the rabbit as well? Was that why you said we didn't have to worry about them? Ren Xiaosu thought to himself that these students were indeed smart. They could figure out the truth with so few details. He whispered, don't say that to anyone else. After all, it would cause somewhat of a sensation if there were any mention of his interaction with the wolves. Since Li Qingzheng was willing to be the scapegoat, Ren Xiaosu was more than happy to let him do it. But Wang Yuqi said, "Do we need to give anything in return?" "I don't think so." Ren Xiaosu thought for a moment and said, "We don't really have anything that we can give them anyway." On the same night, the entire platoon sat down beside the campfire at the entrance of the outpost. With the aroma of the roasted goat attacking their nostrils, the escapees started tearing up as they bit into the meat. These people had been starving for many days, and no one gave them any food even after they were conscripted into the military. Li Qingzheng and his soldiers were refugees who had been recruited during the expansion of the private troops and were also unable to afford meat for the past meals. He lamented, "Actually, I felt terrible when I first learned I had been assigned to the outpost. After all, this is such a nowhere place that it feels like we're being exiled. If we encounter any danger out here, we'll just end up becoming cannon fodder." Ren Xiaosu gave him a look. He didn't expect Li Qingzheng to understand their situation so well, and that he was actually just not showing it. Li Qingzheng continued to lament, "But thinking about it now, it's really quite nice if we could have meat for all of our meals. The smell of goat meat is really great. We can go out and hunt since we have guns," Ren Xiaosu suggested. "But we'll need our guns to fight against the enemy." Li Qingzheng rejected his suggestion. Ren Xiaosu analyzed, "Look, we only have a dozen guns or so. What can we do with a dozen guns when the enemy arrives?" "That really seems to be the case," Li Qingzheng replied after some thought. The students next to them realized Ren Xiaosu seemed to have a unique flair in persuading others. Li Qingzheng was gnawing on goat leg and said with a smile, "I heard that the big shots in the stronghold can have barbecue for every meal. They even prepare lemons and onions before barbecuing the meat, only cooking it to medium rare so that the original juices are retained." Although lemons were uncommon these days, everyone had heard of this type of fruit. They never ate it before, but they heard that lemons were extremely sour. Onions, on the other hand, were still commonly seen. Chen Woody asked in a soft whisper, "Master, why do you need lemons and onions for a barbecue?" Ren Xiaosu pondered it before saying, "So that you can squirt the lemon juice or rub the onions into other people's eyes to get dibs on the meat." Chen Woody was confused. The people around him looked over with expressionless faces. Li Qingzheng said, sounding rather surprised, "Are you serious?" But all of a sudden, Li Qingzheng noticed the light from a vehicle heading up the mountain. He stood up immediately. Why would anyone come to this remote place at this hour of the night? A lone off-road vehicle was approaching them. Venturing out in this current wilderness with so few people was usually not too confidence-inspiring. Under normal circumstances, most people would choose to travel in convoys. So the appearance of this lone off-road vehicle made the situation seem even stranger. Everyone at the outpost stood at the entrance. Li Qingzheng and other soldiers who were issued with guns were even carrying them on their backs. When the off-road vehicle arrived at the entrance of the outpost, the dazzling headlights of the vehicle shone directly in the faces of Ren Xiaosu and the others. It was as though they did not care about how they felt. When two people jumped out of the vehicle, Ren Xiaosu saw they were both wearing the Li Consortium's military uniforms. But from the looks of it, the fabric was much more exquisite than the ones he had come across in the past. No, actually, he had seen it once before. The commander of the combat brigade was dressed just like the two of them. But when Li Qingzheng saw the colonel epaulets on their shoulders, he saluted. "Sirs, we welcome you to our outpost for inspection." The two officers had fair complexions and looked dignified. When they stepped onto the snow in their leather boots, they made crunching sounds. They were even wearing black leather gloves. However, the two men looked exceptionally young. When one of them saw the roasted goat, he said with a smile, "I didn't expect you all to be enjoying this so much." After inspecting several dozen outposts, we noticed all of them were having difficulties just getting by. It's only you guys here who are living so comfortably. Bring 2 chairs over for us. After he said that, he walked into the outpost with the other officer. Li Qingzheng got someone to bring out 2 chairs for these 2 officers while he prepared to sit on the ground. But just as his buttocks touched the ground, that officer suddenly frowned and said, "Did we say you could sit? Stand to the side." He took off his gloves and started cutting some meat from the goat. After taking a bite, he frowned and said, "You didn't even season it properly. This tastes horrible. Tui. Ren Xiaosu watched this guy spit out the meat in his mouth along with some saliva onto the roasted goat. How were the rest of them supposed to eat it now? But his first reaction was to stop Chen Woody. Ren Xiaosu whispered, "Don't be rash. I'll kill them later when no one is around." With the illumination of the campfire, Ren Xiaosu suddenly saw a silvery gleam underneath the officer's eyes. He thought they might have something to fall back on. Why else would the two of them venture out this late at night? It didn't even seem like they had brought any heavy weapons with them. The two officers wiped their hands on the snow and put their leather gloves back on. The lead officer said calmly, "Keep a careful watch at the outpost. If you see any enemies approaching, remember to report it immediately. If there is any delay, all of you will be brought in for a court-martial. There can only be one outcome then, execution." Li Qingzheng bowed slightly as he nodded and said, "Yes, we'll keep a careful watch here at the outpost." As the two men spoke, they got back into the vehicle. With a roar, the vehicle moved off and left behind deep tracks in the snow with its snow chains. The two of them had trashed the originally good mood everyone was in. Someone asked, "Are we going to let them leave just like that?" Li Qingzheng could only helplessly wave it off. "Put out the fire and go to bed. What else can we do if we don't let them leave? Just blame it on our shitty lives. They're family members of the Li Consortium, after all." "What about the goat?" someone asked. "We can still eat it after cutting off the parts they spat on," Li Qingzheng replied. As refugees, they had had a certain submissiveness hammered into their characters. So what if they were angry and feeling wronged? Life would still go on. He then walked into his house. Ren Xiaosu looked at the others and said, "Y'all can go to sleep first. We'll tidy up the place." By we, he was referring to their smaller group consisting of himself, Chen Woody, and the students, which they themselves were fully aware of. But since the students were always diligent at doing their work, no one thought anything of it. When everyone else returned to their houses to rest, Ren Xiaosu said, "Y'all take your time to tidy up. I'll head out for a while." When the students heard that, their eyes lit up. "Good on you, Monitor." The off-road vehicle was moving slowly along the mountain road. Even though the vehicle was equipped with snow chains, they could not drive too fast in the snow, especially not when they were driving downhill. Jazz music was playing inside the vehicle while the officer in the front seat chuckled as he put in another cassette. You can really feel the control the Li Consortium has over these lands when you see the fear in those people's eyes. It's really quite interesting to see them angry but not dare to show it. After we get back this time, we should be able to step up for the second stage of synchronization. By then, even more nanomachines can be injected into our bodies. Apparently, a family member of the Li Consortium in Stronghold 107 has already gone on to the second stage of the process. There's no hurry. We're only just beginning. The family members of the organization were all outstanding and intelligent. They received the best education and understood the truest face of the world. If all the roads in the world led to Rome, they would be born in Rome. But since the Li Consortium could even produce a demon like Li Shenton, they could create even more of such demons. The only difference was that one of them was lonely while the others were not. During their conversation, something suddenly dropped down from above. They looked astounded but managed to react quickly enough to open the door and jump out at the same time. With a loud bang, the shadow clone landed on the off-road vehicle from above and smashed right through the middle. The sparks from the black saber cutting through the vehicle were extraordinarily striking in the darkness. Ren Xiaosu watched this scene quietly from the hillside. But to his surprise, the reactions of the two officers were much quicker than he expected. Furthermore, they should be showing signs of fractures and other injuries after jumping out of the vehicle into the hilly terrain. However, they were unscathed. The two officers got up from the ground and dusted off the snow on their bodies. One of them sneered, "Could it be someone from the outpost?" They were not stupid. Anyone who would attack them in a place like this would definitely have to be from the outpost. But they could never have expected there to actually be a supernatural being posted to that shabby outpost back there. As an officer took off his gloves, he could feel a silver torrent gushing through his veins. The new nanoforms followed his will and gathered within his body until even his blood turned silver. "You're the first supernatural being to face our newfound strength, so you should feel honored." His voice stopped abruptly. He only had enough time to see the black shadow clone suddenly disappear from above the vehicle before a menacing hand grasped him by the neck. With a slight twist, his neck was broken. Ren Xiaosu found it a shame that Luo Lan was not here to see this. Didn't he tell him to not believe in superstitions? When the shadow clone disappeared from sight again, the other officer turned around and tried to escape into the wilderness. However, he was immediately chased down by the shadow clone from behind. The shadow clone punched the spine of its opponent, making a cracking sound. Ren Xiaosu felt some sort of special energy surrounding the spine that was trying to disperse the weight of the punch with an intense, regular motion. However, the strength of the shadow clone was simply too great. Before the opponent could build up his defense, it had already started to break apart. Ren Xiaosu slowly made his way out of the forest. He had noticed a lake on the hillside that was suitable for discarding the corpses and vehicle in. It was just that it would be a bit tough on the shadow clone to carry the vehicle over. After all, it did weigh more than a ton. Ren Xiaosu did not use his saber throughout the battle because he was worried about leaving bloodstains behind. In the end, his opponents turned out to be surprisingly vulnerable. At the beginning, the arrogance of these two people made Ren Xiaosu very cautious of them. He did not expect that his punches would be so strong against them. Just like his encounter with Midnight back then, he had planned on giving it his all in an earth-shattering battle. But before he could even get to that point, his opponents had already been killed. With the outcome like this, it seemed like he had gotten all stoked for nothing. But a moment later, Ren Xiaosu saw a silvery glow seeping out from under the skin of the two bodies. It was as though it was being guided by his will. Ren Xiaosu was surprised to discover that he seemed to be able to control them. Chapter 209 Returning the Favor. When Ren Xiaosu battled the two officers, he had observed a fine, silvery glow coming from the blood vessels on the backs of their hands. As the blood vessels of an ordinary human should look bluish on the outside, it was obvious there was some kind of special energy flowing within their bodies during the time their hands glowed from the inside. At that time, Ren Xiaosu was guessing it was caused by the nanomachines. And from the looks of it now, it was just as he had thought. The silvery radiance emanating from the two officers' bodies right now was like a stream converging into a river as it started building up on the surface of their skins. Ren Xiaosu was hesitating, approaching it warily, not knowing if he should try to acquire this unknown power. He had always been cautious about the unknown. If I end up using it after saying to not believe in superstitions, would that be a little hypocritical? Ren Xiaosu was in a dilemma. During the physical examination at the military base, he discovered that the nanomachines were trying to interface with his neurons via an external controller. But now that no one was controlling them, he realized he had natural control over these things. Nanomachines did not have a mind of their own and were only machines. In the early days, nanomachines could not be put into military use because they were too small to be loaded in with overly complex instructions. After gaining a breakthrough in neurotech, the human brain ended up becoming a processor, while the nanomachines were just an execution terminal. To put it simply, they were purely tools to be used. But nanomachines needed to be paired with a specific DNA sequence before they could be used. Each person's DNA was just like a unique password that could only be used to pair with their own nanomachines. The nanomachines would determine whether they were in an operable state via an authorization process. The paired nanomachines were a safe locked with a password. Without the password, they would stop working and refuse any unfamiliar consciousness from trying to access them. Therefore, the two officers were unable to control each other's nanomachines, and neither could anyone else access theirs. But when Ren Xiaosu's willpower tried to initiate contact with the nanomachines, he detected them to be in an idle state. It was as though there was some sort of a barrier denying him from syncing with those nanomachines. But after his willpower swept over them, the typewriter in the palace suddenly typed several lines of small words. Reloading system. Resetting to factory settings. Reinstalling applications. Pairing successful. After that, Ren Xiaosu found he had actually taken control of these little machines. The silvery river started flowing towards him across the surface of the snow. They moved up along his legs and finally gathered in his hands. The nanomachines extracted from these two officers combined only amounted to the size of a fist. It was no wonder they were so weak. So it turned out they had this few nanomachines inside their bodies. After the nanomachines lost their owners, their ports reopened to wait for a new pairing. Under normal circumstances, they should have been sent back to the factory to be paired again. However, the palace had bypassed all of those steps and helped Ren Xiaosu interface with these nanomachines. If the ports had not been reopened, the palace could not have proceeded with the pairing process. The silvery, liquid metal ball cycled through various strange forms within Ren Xiaosu's palm. Then it turned into a metallic gauntlet that wrapped around Ren Xiaosu's hand. After interfacing with Ren Xiaosu's neurons, they became just like a part of his body and did not make him feel uncomfortable at all. When he threw a punch at the body of the off-road vehicle, he watched the steel body creak and then collapse. Meanwhile, the nanogauntlet on Ren Xiaosu's hand did not seem damaged at all. When Luo Lan mentioned the nanomachines, Ren Xiaosu disdained them greatly. But now his opinion had changed a little. If he could create body armor with the nanomachines, did it mean he wouldn't have to use the shadow clone to shield himself from bullets? After all, that method was still rather painful for him. Of course, it had only changed his opinion a little for now. As for whether it would really prove to be useful, Ren Xiaosu felt that he would only find out after extracting more nanomachines from the other members of the Li Consortium. Someone would surely come and investigate after 2 elite members of the Li Consortium disappeared while they were out on inspection. Ren Xiaosu wondered if those who came to investigate would also have nanomachines in them. Ren Xiaosu ordered the shadow clone to place the 2 corpses in the vehicle and carry it to the location of the lake as per his memory. He had to be extremely careful when it came to dumping these corpses since he still needed more people with nanomachines to come out here in the future. When he killed them, he did not use the saber as he was afraid of leaving behind any traces of blood. Right now, he was being even more careful for fear of leaving behind any evidence. As Ren Xiaosu led his shadow clone forward, he asked, "Old Zhu, do you think the amount of nanomachines in the body varies from person to person? Since the synchronization rate goes from low to high, there must be a difference in the amount of nanomachines one can control, right? Do you think that the next group of people to arrive will be even stronger? That would be good. Who knows, they might have even more nanomachines in their bodies. Aren't you being a little shy? Why aren't you talking?" People always said that small details make a big difference. So, in order not to expose his own identity, Ren Xiaosu decided to name his shadow clone, Old Zhu. Before Ren Xiaosu threw the vehicle into the lake, he removed the 2 officers' uniforms and put them away in his storage space. Who knew if they would be of any use later? These were the Li Consortium's colonel uniforms, after all. After he filled the vehicle with stones and threw it into the lake, he returned to the outpost. When the students saw him coming back, they went up to him and asked, "Monitor, how'd it go?" "It's been taken care of," Ren Xiaosu answered simply and comprehensively. "Go back to sleep. We still have to get up early tomorrow." At this moment, Ren Xiaosu noticed the Wolf King standing on the summit of the mountain way in the distance. He thought for a while before heading out into the mountains. In reality, Ren Xiaosu also did not know why he was so eager to interact with the Wolf King. As he walked on the mountain path, he suddenly felt it was sometimes easier to get along with the wolves than with people. Before Ren Xiaosu could get far, he saw the Wolf King slowly coming down from the mountain ridge. He had planned on chatting with the Wolf King, but he did not know what to say after he saw it. As the Wolf King looked calmly at him, Ren Xiaosu thought about how it was still chasing him all over the wilderness just 1.5 years ago. He suddenly remembered the student who mentioned giving the wolves something in return for their favor. Ren Xiaosu opened his mouth and broke the deadlock. He said, Since you gave me a rabbit and a goat, shouldn't I also give you something in return?" The Wolf King did not say anything, but Ren Xiaosu could feel it relaxing its muscles slowly. This meant the Wolf King was also putting down its guard. When Ren Xiaosu saw no response, he prodded, "Since you can't speak, why don't I let you choose from a few gifts that I have? Look at you, you're always running around by yourself in the mountains. I can understand that a king is always lonely, so why don't I present you the Lord of Wolves of Mount Kun? He can chat with you since both of you are considered kings of the wolves. Who knows, you two might have something in common." For some reason, Ren Xiaosu felt the Wolf King understood him. Because, when he mentioned the Lord of Wolves of Mount Kun, the Wolf King immediately gave a look of disdain. Ren Xiaosu wondered how the Wolf King was even able to make such an expression. Chapter 210 Trade Complete. When Ren Xiaosu looked at the Wolf King's strange expression, he said, "If you don't want the Lord of Wolves of Mount Kun, I still have other things that I can offer you." He took out a pistol and asked, "Do you want this?" The Wolf King kept quiet as it reverted back to its calm expression. Ren Xiaosu put away the gun. A man and a wolf were sitting next to each other on this mountain path with the moonlight shining down upon them. It was an atmosphere that could only be described as exceptionally harmonious. "Do you want this?" Ren Xiaosu took out a bottle of antibiotics old Wang gave him before they parted ways. Although he did not fall sick as often now, he could use it to save the students in case they fell ill. However, the Wolf King still did not respond. Ren Xiaosu pulled out a dazzling array of items like a hammer, shovel, pot, etc., but the Wolf King still remained unmoved. Ren Xiaosu sighed, "If you are gonna be so picky, I won't be able to return your favor." Wait a minute. He still had one item he didn't take out. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu brought out a vial of black medicine from his storage space. "Do you want this?" When Ren Xiaosu said this, he did not hold any high hopes while pulling the stopper off the vial. But when the Wolf King sniffed and caught a whiff of the smell in the air, it suddenly nodded to Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu was momentarily taken aback as he did not expect the Wolf King to really understand human language. He threw the vial over and the Wolf King picked it up with its mouth as it got up. Ren Xiaosu could finally let out a sigh of relief. It looked like they were not going to be lacking any meat from now on. "I never expected that you'd need something like this while in the prime of your life." When the Wolf King heard that, it looked a little confused. It didn't seem like it realized what Ren Xiaosu had just given it. It was just that there was an inexplicably attractive smell emanating from the vial into the air. It was not the smell of the medicine that attracted it, but a smell of mystery that originated from the palace. Then the man and the wolf parted ways. After a brief exchange, Ren Xiaosu felt that his relationship with the Wolf King had become a little closer. At the very least, they were now trading partners or something like that. As long as they were not enemies, anything was fine. In the wee hours of the same night, everyone at the outpost was jolted awake by the noisy howling of the wolves. Everyone put on their clothes as they walked out of their houses and looked towards the mountains. They could not tell where the howling was coming from. Li Qingzheng was wearing a military overcoat and wondered, "What's the matter with those wolves in the middle of the night? They've been howling for over an hour already. Are they out on a hunt?" Ren Xiaosu felt a little guilty. They probably are. Who knows? Could they be gathering their allies to attack the outpost? Someone wondered. That's unlikely. They wouldn't need to gather their allies to attack our outpost. We'll all be dead if just a few hundred of them came to attack us, someone said. Aren't we putting ourselves down too much by saying that? A soldier said. Ren Xiaosu said in seriousness, "That's what you call self-awareness." However, Ren Xiaosu felt a little guilty because he suspected it might have something to do with the black medicine he had given the Wolf King that caused the wolves to behave so abnormally. For the next 2 days, the Wolf King did not send any additional game from their hunts to the outpost. After they cut off the dirtied part of the roasted goat, Li Qingzheng and the others continued eating it with relish. However, Ren Xiaosu did not have any appetite for it anymore. It was not a matter of whether the meat was dirtied or not, but in Ren Xiaosu's opinion, that spit represented an insult from the high and mighty family members of the organization. But of course, it was mainly because he was not hungry. Li Qingzheng lamented as he sat at the edge of the campfire and looked at what remained of the goat. "I wonder what happened to the wolves. Why aren't they sending us food anymore? They're probably exhausted." Ren Xiaosu sighed. He was thinking about if he should have clearly explained the effects of the medicine to the Wolf King. After all, there was quite a difference between using it externally and internally. Seeing how the Wolf King did not send him any more game after taking the medicine, could it bear a grudge against him now? But when Ren Xiaosu was sleeping that night, he suddenly heard something that sounded like goods being unloaded coming from outside the house. When Ren Xiaosu looked out the window, he saw the wolves dumping several goats, boars, pheasants, and whatnot on the ground. It was quite a selection of different wild animals. Just looking at the quantity, they not only made up for not bringing any game over for the past 2 days, but they also brought a lot more than that. After the wolves left, everyone at the outpost was in shock. A soldier looked at Li Qingzheng and said, "Are you really the Lord of Wolves?" Even Li Qingzheng was also shocked at this. Could I really be the Lord of Wolves of Mount Kun? Those who did not know the truth felt a sense of respect for Li Qingzheng. But the students who knew better all looked at Ren Xiaosu with complicated expressions on their faces. A student asked, "Monitor, how did you manage to do that?" "The Wolf King probably knows that my master is ill, so it decided to send over more game for his recuperation," Chen Wudi said with a sigh. "There's nothing wrong with my brain," Ren Xiaosu snapped at him. He reckoned the Wolf King had sent over all this game mainly because it wanted to thank him. He could have never expected that the Wolf King had an underlying condition. At this moment, someone said, "How long will it take for us to finish eating all this?" "Fortunately for us, it's winter now, so we can store them for a longer time. But we can't just leave it there like that. Why don't we make it into cured meat?" Ren Xiaosu sighed and said, "If we make it into cured meat, it wouldn't even be a problem to keep them until the start of spring." The group started busily skinning and cutting up the meat. However, they did not have enough salt to start curing the meat, nor were there any seasonings and spices. Cured meat was usually made by cutting the meat into strips before rubbing the surface with salt and drying it. There wasn't a need to worry about wasting salt, since the salt needed by the human body would be present in the cured meat. By eating it, it would be as good as replenishing the body's salt content. Ren Xiaosu said, "In another 2 days, we can trade for some salt and seasonings with the meat we have during the supply run. We won't be able to finish this much meat anyway." "Don't do that," Li Qingzheng said softly, "you'll suffer a huge loss if you barter with those ruffians. We might as well sell them in town. Not only can we buy more salt that way, but we can also earn quite a bit of money. We can then afford to buy more things so that it won't get too miserable in the mountains during winter." Ren Xiaosu looked at Li Qingzheng, who seemed to be very familiar with the private troops' behavior. He heard Li Qingzheng say, "We'll sneak back to town in another 2 days. Don't you still have some friends in town? We can bring some of the cured meat to them. It can be a little difficult to get by winter without having some meat to eat." "Sure," Ren Xiaosu nodded in response. This would also be his chance to go back to town to visit Yan Luyuan and the others. If they'd encountered any difficulties, Ren Xiaosu would be able to help them to resolve them as well. Everyone was working outside in the open ground in front of the outpost. Li Qingzheng weighed the fleshy meat in his hand and said with a sigh, "This feels more blissful than the days I spent in town." "Master, what does blissful mean?" Chen Wudi asked Ren Xiaosu. Li Qingzheng was amused. Wouldn't having meat to eat already count as blissful? Ren Xiaosu gave Li Qingzheng a look and said softly to Chen Wudi, "Everyone's definition of bliss is different. Are you happy when you're subduing demons and monsters?" "Yes, I am," Chen Wudi said. "Well then, that's what bliss means to you," Ren Xiaosu said. "I get it." This concludes the chapters. Show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribe.